Hi, pleasant day, everybody. My name is Dion Lafoucade, and I'm the host for Everybody In, which is a program that works with coaches and shares information to coaches not only in Trinidad and Tobago, in the Caribbean, but in the wider world. So we're really happy today. We have a very special guest. We have Mr. Leslie Tiger Fitzpatrick. Leslie, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Pleasant morning to everyone. Always a pleasure to see you and to break bread and talk the beautiful game, Dion. Thank you for having me.
You're most welcome. And Tiger, don't mind me because I'm going to be referring to you as Tiger, right, throughout the program. Before we start, what I'm going to do is just say a little prayer to start the show. So, dear God, thank you for this opportunity. We thank you for Leslie. We thank you that that he's been able to do this with us. We also remember people at this time who will need your assistance in whatever way in life. And we know that you will come true for them. In Yeshua's name we pray, amen. Tiger,
Amen.
it's such a pleasure to have you here. We have had so many conversations over the years, and you have obviously you're from Trinidad and Tobago, but you've gone on to do fantastic things, which we'll hear in a little bit. But Tiger, what I want you to do is to talk a little bit about your journey from when you started as a kid to where you are right now. If you can share with us, please.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, you would have been around for a lot of that in the youthful years, with Lafoucade's coaching school, and I was with Jalili White. Who I always give a lot of credit to for helping to create the person that I am as a person, as a human being, and then also as a player, and now in my adulthood. And similarly, Hayden Martin, my college coach, Brutal Sinclair, so many of them, Ron Lars, and everybody passed you, Anton. And so, for me, like everybody else, you grew up in Trinidad and Tobago, and you want to be pro. From the first time you could walk, I remember the first pictures I have barely able to walk, but I have a ball by my feet. And it's ironic because neither my parents played football, and they're always trying to take credit for who was the one that gave me the football talent. And of course, God give you the talent, and it's what you do with it. And I just actually went through a course talking about what is talent, and is talent innate, or is it learned, and what are the qualities and how you develop it and stuff. So everybody always said, well, you had a natural talent for the game. Went to Newtown Boys, didn't really play much organizational football at the start. I moved to my grandmother in Mover, so I was right around the corner from Malik Senior Comprehensive at that point in time growing up. And I remember just going down by the savannah down there and playing, and went to Harvard for a little bit. And then it was funny that the team in Mova was called Cricket Club, but it was a football club. So we used to go down in the savannah and play, and we'd have this street against this street on Christmas morning and stuff. So just really playing as much, and I have two sisters, Leslie and Leslie. My mom, my dad has passed, Leslie Senior. Um, and so I spent a lot of time by myself, and creating imaginary friends in the yard and playing with them, because I didn't have the brothers to play with. But then your friends become your brothers, and that becomes your core group that helps you in terms of your development. And so I went on to St. Mary's College after, in those days, common entrance, I guess was SCA now. And that's really where I think my formal development in football started. Made the under 14 team, joined Jar Lily White's coaching school, because a lot of the guys on the team were either in Jar, Kenny Lai, or Lafoucade's coaching school at that point. And we lived right in Woodbrook, at the bottom of Marval Road and Chadwick Road. Had a little apartment, and we had a house in Trinity, but at that point, the traffic and all that, so we rented a small place, 2 bedroom, and I think in those days it was $350 for a
Wow.
2 bedroom, and so I would walk to school, walk to Newtown, walk to the Savannah, and then when I passed for CIC, I used to walk there. And then we got a place a little bit further down. I think it might have been $450 for a 3 bedroom on Board Street, so right next to the government printry. And so 7 minutes walk to school. I'd ride my bike, I'd run everywhere. And so I joined coaching school, and at that point in time, Ja was actually the national under 14 coach. And I remember, going through the screening process and all that, and I was a Ja player, and Ja didn't pick me. And that was one of the the hardest things in life, because I knew within the coaching school framework, I was a player that was touted highly by John, by everyone else as a, a player with high potential, um, great growth mindset or whatever it is, athletic. I did all the sports. I grew up with football, karate, swim, play basketball. And I remember that national under 14 team was going to Venezuela, and the Jar didn't pick me. And I remember, because in training, like, for weeks, he would be trying to get me out of the mindset of just using my physical prowess and, my speed as my advantage, because I could just push the ball and go past people. And he was like, no, but you're going to run into people who bigger, faster, stronger at some point in time. You have to be adaptable. You have to be, you have to have different tools in your tool bag to be able to like solve problems and stuff. And because I was so dominant physically, it just didn't resonate until he didn't pick me for that team. And then, and so that was the first, I guess, level of, when people talk about disappointment and hearing more no's in your life than yeses. And it came from the person that I probably looked up to, one of the people I looked up to the most, and somebody that I spent a lot of time with. And that was my first lesson in resiliency and in terms of like perseverance and all of that. And, I made a vow to myself that that would never happen to me again. And I think from there, I went from, the national team when I got selected after that, the 14s going into the 15s. And even that was a little bit of an ordeal, because Jargon wasn't really totally enamored with how the youth setup was, and he would have had inside knowledge of it with the TTFA at the point in time and stuff. So he didn't really want us going into the thing. He knew that he could create a pathway for us, and we would go overseas to travel, and they used to go to Dallas Cup and different events. But for every youth player, every young player, playing for your national team is what you want to do. And so we missed a lot of the screening, a lot of the stuff that you would have gone to. And I remember we were going to play a game. The North Zone team, they picked a zonal team, and that had the likes of Carlos Edwards and Kerwin Jemmett and myself. That was going to play the national team just prior to them going to the U15 tournament in Jamaica. And we played, it was the opening of the Northern Football Association. So we played it on President's Ground. And everybody was there, Jack and Ollie and all the people. And this was on the Sunday, and the team was leaving on the Thursday. And we beat them 4-2, and I scored 3 goals. And Jack was like, how these guys not on the national team, and these guys on the national team, and they go in and they beat them. And Jack in his own special Jack way was like, two of us had to go. And so I got selected for that team. And from there, I think every national team after that, all the way to the senior level. And of course there were bumps and omissions when I was in college and stuff like that. But every level of national team after that, I was able to progress and make it. When I was young, I had the opportunity to go to Holland at a young age. Brent Rhyme went to Newcastle. I went to Holland with Angus Eve, Stokely Mason, Sherlin David, Muffin Daniel. We got identified. House of Dread actually had a group working with an agent, and we got identified, and I went over, and I was able to make it. Myself and Angus, we were able to make it there, and I spent a year in Holland. I didn't stay longer because we had issues at that point, and now you see it with what FIFA has in terms of minors crossing borders to be able to play, so before 18 years old. And that's a big thing that a lot of the Trinidad and Tobago population don't understand, is, because of FIFA rules, it restricts it, and it's really a safeguard, right? It's something to prevent the exploitation of minors across the globe. And so a big part of being able to stay and all that at that time was being able to be in school, and, to go to have a sustainable place to be able to live, if your family was moving over. And of course, for us, that wasn't an option. But I was able to go and get just over a year and a half there, which was really, really big in my development, playing for Rhoda. And again, a lot of life lessons that, I always speak to. So I had Bertil Sinclair and coach me the 17s after Kenny, for the 15s after Kenny Lai, and then Bertil played a huge part in my career all through the ages, because he ended up being the coach for so many teams. And then I had Keith Lacloy at one point in time with the 20s. But anyway, I went to road at like 15, 16, first time seeing snow, not showing up because I thought, well, it's snowing, so we can't be playing football, and they downstairs waiting for me. And, you go and after the training, you're there, and it's just, they no water, they're bringing tea for you because it's so cold, so you're not drinking water. And, the coach asking me after, like, why weren't you downstairs? And I was like, Coach, I never saw snow in my life. I didn't know we could play. You go there and they roll out an orange ball and you're playing in the snow. And and again, in terms of professionalism, it was one of the lessons where he was like, you don't dictate if there's training or not. You just show up when you're supposed to show up, and then we will tell you what happens after that, and you start picking up these little nuggets. And one time playing, and again being at that age a little bit more advanced in a lot of ways to a lot of the players going out there and having huge success, going goal after goal in games. I was a striker at the start. And one game we played some little village team and I scored 7 goals. And then we actually played a proper team in a league game the next weekend, and I scored 2. And I go on off there, thinking, well, yeah, I scored 2 goals, we win the game. And the coach was livid with me, and like, so, we got into the car. A lot of the things was in the car ride, right? You learn so much on the car ride. And so he was like, what was wrong with you today? And I was like, nothing, I was good. I felt good. And he's like, yeah, but you scored 2 goals. I said, I know. Like, I know I scored 2 goals and we won. And he said, no, but last week you scored 7. And I said, yeah, but coach, it's like chalk and cheese. It's like you're telling me I play Barca this week and I play in like the bottom of the tier, and you want me to perform the same way. And he said, no, but you see, that mentality is, you wouldn't make it, because your mentality is, I have to be better every single time, no matter who I'm playing. And we know that it's not a reality that you will be able to, but that's the mindset you have to have, right? And you have to understand that you're coming in as a foreigner, you're coming to take the spot of a local. The players here will really embrace you until you show them that you can help them in their journey. You have to win everybody over. It costs us 6 or 7 times as much as to take a local kid. So your mindset has to be just as a machine, like you just want to. And at 14 and 15 years old, we're not wired like that, right? You play with your friends, you walk down, you get a snow cone after practice, you bathe by the standpipe, and you go about your business, and so it was the first real introduction to professionalism and the professional mindset. And it really has augured well for me in my life, because I've seen all the trials and tribulations. I've hit the depths that people wouldn't understand, and having to sleep in my car on certain occasions, trying to chase this dream and all of that. And again, I remember Hayden Martin used to tell us, he was like, our blessing is our curse, because we have so much talent, we have so much ability, but some of us have so many options in life. You could go to CIC, you're gonna get a job. I was able to get to go to Ivy League institution for my undergrad. So guys coming out of school making $80,000-$90,000 first year at 21, 22 years old. So to have the mindset to have to go through the peaks and valleys of what it takes to become a football player, professional football player, is easy to walk away. And there had times when things didn't go my way and I thought about it, but then you knew you had this hunger and this burning passion, and the things that you learn at 13 and 14 and 15 starts to come back to you. And so you're like, all right, well, I know I'm good enough. I know I could make it. And that was part of my journey actually to the senior national team. Was I'd gotten injured. Again, coming out of university, I was in high demand and stuff, and then a team folded, and so I went to train in Tampa with Maurice Lorgnard and Marlon Ross at their school, and then went to Cincinnati to play, and Columbus identified me. I went up, and the first day I was at Columbus, I tore my quad. No insurance, no contract, nothing like that. I was out for 8 months. I was blessed that they were able to help me, through the rehab. I would have to go in after the players and all that, and then eventually played for them, within their system. But then, at that point in time, they had just won the Open Cup. They were top. Ansel Elcock was there, and they had a bunch of national team players, McBride and Frankie Haydock and stuff. And they're like, coming off of the injury and the fitness levels and all that, you need to get to a place where you're playing consistently to hit your marks again. And I remember going to, maybe 15 to 18 trials and being told no. Being told you were the best, but we don't have an international spot. You're this, but there was always a but. And, again, I had this Ivy League degree that when I was going to make my first contract with Atlanta Silverbacks, I think was like $1,800 a month plus bonuses, and not a professional player. When you look at the numbers, that's not, you're in a pro environment, but you're not making the money that is associated with being a pro. But I knew that was just another step to where I wanted to be. And, you know, I went to Charleston Battery, and they had won the USL the time before. And Chris Ramsey, who ended up being, you know, a very influential person in youth development, especially in England, and, you know, coach at Queen's Park Rangers in the Premiership. He had won the title. And I remember him telling me about, he's like, you're easily the best. And I know you probably hear that, but we won, and I play this direct style. And at that point, I dropped back into the midfield, and he was like, you want to like connect the dots and do all this, and we will drive each other crazy. Because I just won the league, so I know my style works. And you know your style works because you've been successful with it. But they might not align. But he's like, go to Atlanta. I think Atlanta would like you, and they might sign you. And it might come back to haunt me. But if they don't, then come back and we'll try to work through it. And Atlanta signed me the first day. And we played Charleston, and we beat them 3 or 4 times in the year. So every time he would just shake his head and say, you know. But again, another, and one of the most honest conversations I've ever had in football, and I always reference it. I haven't even talked to Chris this was 2004, maybe. I haven't talked to him probably since 2005 or 6, but I always bring it up because, again, it was one of the most honest conversations and a catalyst for where I ended up going, because I went to Atlanta. Same thing, tough contract, but just playing, just hungry. And then I remember the national team did a ID event in South Carolina. Anton and all them came up, and I went to that event, you know, with the fire burning and all that. And obviously they were like, yeah, but where you been all these years? We know you went to college and you fall off the radar. And I was like, yeah, well, I was trying to get back onto the radar. And then, you know, from that, being told all those no's a year, you know, for the 2 years before, playing 1 season in Atlanta, going through this ID, coming down to Trinidad, being selected with the team that played the Caribbean Cup, and then he had the Denzel Theobalds and Hardises, and then by the next year being on that World Cup qualification roster and playing in the first games, and then helping us to qualify for the World Cup. So within the span of 18 months, my career went from sleeping in my car sometimes trying to fight it to now helping the country qualify for the World Cup. And even with Leo again, another huge impactful person, just reality check all along the way with where you are. And all at one time I was playing, and Dwight comes, and when Dwight comes, Russell come, you give them the ball, right? That's how we do. And he's like, no, don't lose the ball in this part of the field. The problem is we lose the ball 60 to 80 times in positions where we could get hurt in games, and at the top level you're doing that 10 times. And so breaking it down into the thirds, and where you want to keep, and Otis and I there, and we playing, but Otis know you're gonna pass to Dwight, so he pick off one and he runs, and Leo blows the whistle and starts to go off on us, and probably talk like 3 languages in that diatribe that he was doing after me. And then he just stopped, and he was like, where you playing? And at this point I was in the MLS, and I was playing with Real Salt Lake. I was like, Real Salt Lake, and he's like, you see him pondering, like, Real. He's like, you ever heard of Real Madrid? I say, yes, coach. He said, well, that's where I coach. So if I tell you, do that, Real Madrid, I don't know what Real Salt Lake is, but I know Real Madrid. And you can see the Real thing on the back there. So it was so interesting when you hear the youths and them saying, now there's levels to this, right? And there was levels to it. And, he wanted us to be in Europe. And I remember, again, now leaving Real Salt Lake in the middle of a contract, asking them for permission to go to Europe to, again, try to like hit the levels to be able to make the final roster. And going to Germany as an alternate, and being in the stands and looking, and just the heights, and the Sweden game was probably one of the most emotional days of my career, because it was the heights of seeing us at probably the best result we might have ever had as a country, outside of the Bahrain game to qualify, but on the world stage and being in the stands, not being able to be on the field, but being part of that. And I remember crying and laughing, and just all of it, man, all the gamut of emotion. So did that, and then I guess I'll fast forward for the interest of time. But then went through years playing again, what would have been probably for most people a journeyman, because you're going from team to team, and being highly touted, highly regarded, starting to understand leadership. I remember in one place, we grew up in such a place where we were so demanding of each other, and there was not a lot of positive reinforcement at times. It was like, you have to be this, and and so we as players and as leaders almost demanded that of each other, and the way we communicated was like that. and North America wasn't like that. I remember having big conversations with Stu and John on and off the field about, you know, the way that we talk to each other and all that, because we need to get the best out of players. And Stu was a drill sergeant when it came to that. But, you know, a lot of players, the mentality is you might not be able to handle it, right? And I learned that lesson playing in Rochester, where the coach was like, yeah, but when you come down on that guy might be able to handle it, and you need him to be able to be at the peak of his powers to play. So if you really bash him, you're not going to get the best out of him, and you need him. And, you know, I didn't understand it because I was like, we're pros here. Like, everybody's supposed to be at that same level. So then I stopped talking completely. I was the captain of the team, and you know, Brent Sancho was there and Errol McFarlane. And so I would just go and play my game. And then the coach pulled me square again. I was like, what are you doing? And I was like, I'm playing. And he's like, yeah, but you're not talking to the players. And I was like, yeah, but you tell me when I talk to them. He's like, yeah, but now they're looking like you're angry with them. And so they're still not performing for you. So it's not about how you communicate always. Well, it is about how, but it's understanding each personality and what gets the best out of them. You could scream at Errol, you could scream at Brett because they grew up, they could take that, but you might be able to put your arm around the shoulder with the next guy and try to get the best out of him, or you might have to like always positive reinforce with this other kid. And so then you start learning personalities and traits and what really makes somebody tick. And that's the earmark of a leader, right? Is understanding how to get the best out of your group by really burning the fire under each and every one. And so that again was another lesson that helped me, you know, in my trajectory and in my path. And so retired, my dad got ill and I came back home. Brent had said, let's go and play with Northeast. We do this. And it was tough. It was really tough coming back home, you know, seeing a lot of things where the players were really ill-treated. You know, contracts weren't even being honored in certain ways. They tried to come at me in certain ways because I would be almost like the pseudo representative for these players. All these players were, hey, I have this happening, you know, help me. And it was almost like I was seen as this person going against the grain of the ownership. And, you know, the pro league, the owners with the board. So the board of directors dictating what's going on and you kind of going up against them. And, you know, Dexter Skeen was president or chairman of the pro league at the time. And Dexter was a good friend. He also went to Colombia and we had a good relationship. And so I could go to Dexter and be like, Dexter, this isn't right. And every tribunal that they would have something would be independent, which was great because it wasn't a biased, you know, adjudication of what it was. And so I went to like 4 or 5 for these players and 2 for myself and would win every time. And the owner like would be livid because they're like, but we own and we paying these boys. But there's right things in life and there's professionalism and there's ways to do things and all of that. And for me, losing out on opportunities and all that to fight for what is the right thing and what actually progresses us as a country or progresses us as a league or progresses us as a club or progresses you as an individual will always trump anything else, you know. And so I got to the age where you know, I almost left to go back up to the MLS, but again, my dad being ill and I was trying to help my mom. My sisters were in the middle of their education, one going on to be a dentist, the other one a PhD, and so we couldn't disrupt that. And so eventually it just kind of wore me down. I got into a little business down in Trinidad and then, you know, retired, I guess, officially 2012, where, you know, my body was starting to break down, but I wasn't taking care of myself properly because I was home. And so then you go through the midlife crisis of what's next. You know, what's next in life? You know, you want to stay in football. It wasn't going to be in Trinidad just because I knew that for the things I wanted to do, the mindset that I had, I needed to have a wave of people that were aligned, and we didn't have that. You know, and you hope every year that you see it coming, and you know, every year you get disappointed in ways sometimes when you hear certain things happening. And a lot of us out here with all of the ability and the desire to help, we're not even given the opportunity to. Like, and I said it to a lot of people in the last few years, like, I can't beg you to help you. You know, if you ask for my help, if you ask to talk to me, or you want to lean on my resources, Denzel Theobald is one of my really, really close friends, and he is the prototype for what can happen when you have somebody that has the ambition and the drive. And I mean, he would call me after a game, after the last under 20 games, and we would talk football again and share messages. And you see a young person, because he was in jail with me, but younger, and the national team, and you're just proud of where he comes from, if you know where he comes from, and what he's become as a man and a human being. And we talk about, so much within the game and the development and the players and the analysis, similar to the conversations you and I have, Dion. So you would understand right away the level that we're dealing at. And he's talked about coming up here and shadowing, and if it has to even come out of his own pocket, because that's a personal development thing, and it should not be his responsibility to do that for a young progressive mind like that wants to develop. But sometimes you have to do it yourself, and I had to do it myself a lot of times. And Cornell has reached out, and other guys, they want to help, and they want to give back, and they want to assist, and they understand the value of personal and professional development, because they've been in these environments where if you stagnate, you're getting left behind. And so similarly, again, I went into coaching. I had an opportunity in Toronto and in Buffalo, and I went over and again starting to hear the stuff that Shaka and the guys talk about in England with the barriers to upward mobility for Black coaches and for minority coaches. And I had this Ivy League degree, and again I was like, I didn't want to end up in a place where I was pigeonholed and not able to get upward mobility. So how do I advance myself? So I went through the badges, and I got the top license at the time in the US, the USA. And then I was like, you know what, I want to go do my master's degree in sports administration, sports management, because that would be my unique selling proposition. That would be my USP. That would be my differentiator, because in life you have to have something that differentiates you. Everybody is qualified and has quality. What sets you apart? What makes you different? What gives you that edge? And so with me, I would have an Ivy League degree undergrad. I would have a master's. I would have every license you could have. I would have, the ability to connect. I would have the experience. So I just went through the ladder of checking what is going to make me different, and I kept doing it, and I kept pushing, and I had to spend the $30,000 to go to school, and and you're still owing now but again, you're starting to see where it manifests itself. And you trust in God, and you trust in your family, you trust in your friends to be that support system for you to get you through. And again, tough years. At this point, I had my kids. I had five kids. With Rianne, the eldest, who I was raising since she, was 4 or 5 years old. Then we had Jordan, Kayla, Gabby Jr., Leslie Jr., and then Quinn. And having to support a family and like doing that, and still trying to fight to make it. And in Canada, you started seeing the barriers again. You started seeing the ceiling, and I started to get these roles, but it would never be with TFC. It would never be with Vancouver. It would never be in Montreal. It was always, even though I was in part of the league and played. And I made a decision to come back to the US in 2019. And because of the licenses and the experience and the pedigree, I was able to become an executive director of a youth soccer club, which again is one of the highest roles in a nonprofit organization. And then COVID hit. And that was another challenge where it was growth, because it was trying to make a club survive. And that was in Virginia. You would know, Dion, when I was down there, and really starting to hit, what you need to be able to understand holistically. The University of Miami prepared me well with the degree, because it talked about fundraising, it talked about legal, it talked about budgeting, it talked about all the things that you would have to be proficient at to be an executive director, a leader, a general manager within the sport industry. And we're able to navigate COVID, come out in a better place. And then again, my ambition as well. This club is this size. I want to build it. I feel like I'm a builder. That's where my juices flow. Building things, taking development and creating, whether it's player development, whether it's club development, whether it's league development. And of course, the league started to recognize me again, because I was just back, just like the national team. I was back on the radar. Nobody knew where I was. And so they're like, what you been doing? And I started doing match director stuff for them and talent ID for them, and just little individual projects. And then eventually they were like, we want you back in the ecosystem. Like, what appeals to you? And so again, you do a internal audit of what really matters and where I want to be. And I started looking at, all right, what are the roles and functions? And I think, to be fair, this role that I'm in, head of talent ID and recruitment, wasn't one, because I was like, oh, I want to be academy director. I want to be this. But then learning about Red Bull which is a global brand, obviously with Leipzig, Salzburg, Champions League clubs, us, Bragantino in Brazil, learning where they place value in certain roles. And this is one of the most highly valued roles because their philosophy is to promote from within the academy, to get young talent and move them. So you've had Erling Haaland and Sadio Mane and Patson Daka and all these guys go through the Red Bull system on their way to where they, more people might know them when they get to the cities and to the Liverpools and stuff, but they've all gone through that Red Bull pathway. Guardiola now that plays, for City, and then certainly Tyler Adams, US captain, and you see it, right? And the organization is very progressive, not just on the player side, but on the coaching side. You see Jesse Marsh, and he went to Salzburg and then ended up in the Premiership with Leeds, and Chris Amos ends up on the bench of Manchester United. And so they really push you through the system, and the talent ID and the ability to recruit players is one of the hallmarks of where they see a future sporting director or head of football. And so it was a challenge that I embraced, and I've been blessed again to gone through and done, fairly well in my first year and 2 months, and now talking about new contracts and what that looks like and different roles and functions, and have the support of the club implicitly, which is fantastic, and had to deal with stuff with racism on the field for and against our players, and being thrust into things with the league and with the club to be able to help navigate that and be a leader in that space, which again, I was prepared for in life. I know that God has blessed me in a way that I've been prepared for all of these things, and you never know why they fall on your plate. And people coming to me to say, well, they're lucky to have you, because if they didn't have you, it might have been botched in certain ways or whatever. And again, I still learn every single day. I go into the office invigorated to learn more, to rub shoulders with people. When we go into Salzburg for the next gen tournament, I'm adamant that I'm going to stay the extra 2 weeks to go visit clubs and to go visit, the other clubs and see what best practices are, because that's our intention always. I have an academy director who is so like-minded in that way that he's like, it's never good enough. We need to know what's better. What does better look like? What does best look like? Sporting director, the same way. Julian de Guzman, top cap player for Canada. Joachim Schneider is our head of football, Sebastian Hausel. And so we have a really, really good group. And then on the marketing and the front office side, John Mark, the Grand Prix GM of the club, and, Carrie Cohen, like just a fantastic group to work with that's really helped me. I've been approached by other clubs and stuff, and I kind of see, well, at this point in time in my journey, I'm in the right place. You think about it, you pray about it, you talk to, your mentors, you talk to your family, and right now, it's been fantastic. So hopefully this is just another, rung on the ladder, and that's kind of like as long as I was, it's still the shortened version of the story. But yeah, and a lot of it, but it's great to be able to share it at times, and it really also re-energizes me when you think about it, because sometimes you get into this place where you're just in autopilot and you don't remember all of the things that you've gone through that really give you that impetus to be more and to do more and to give back more and to be there, and so trying to do stuff with the sport company now, trying to do stuff with a couple of guys back home on the girls side. I did so much on the girls side, and I have 5 daughters, 1 son, so the girls matter to me, and so there's so many things that I want to do and to give back. So again, this is a platform to help to do that, and a catalyst for change. And so again, thank you for giving me that opportunity to share and to also to contribute a little bit more.
Tiger, what can I say? That was fantastic. I mean, you're talking there, and I'm saying to myself, I'm thinking of so many coaches I want to share this with, because they think that they only see obstacles, but they don't see opportunities. The name of the program is Everybody In, and there's another program, I do call There Is Hope.
Yeah.
And this is more geared towards the coaches. But, as head of talent ID and recruitment for the New York Red Bulls, Tiger, what I want to ask you is just a little bit on our theme, Everybody In, and what do you think of something like this that tries to encourage coaches to work together? What do you think of the theme, Everybody In?
So it's so ironic, because I remember when you shared that with me, and and I thought the name was fantastic. The vision is fantastic, and why it resonated is because you wouldn't believe the theme of New York Red Bulls, or Red Bulls as an organization, is all in. So it's
Wow.
all in. So it's just, it's everybody understanding that we need to be on the same page. We need to, be singing from the same hymn sheet, on the same script, if we want to really go to the next level. And one of the things I always talk about with back home, even as a player, we almost have this crab and barrel mentality where it's easier to rise if we pull somebody down rather than to elevate them and let them pull us up. And it was one of the things that I felt as during my years of playing, we didn't do enough. And I think it's because a lot of the players who were my seniors felt that if I tried to help somebody, they would try to pull me down to go above them rather than let's try to see if we can elevate more. Let's elevate more of us, because then you start to have strength in numbers, as we talk about, right? And I saw the Jamaicans do it. I saw Ricardo Gardner just bringing player after player when he was at Bolton, and most of them wouldn't make it, and it wasn't a reflection on him. He was helping Bolton to stay in the Premiership and do whatever it is. But I feel like we, as a culture, need to get to that place, and everybody encapsulates that. If everybody's in, whether it's in politics, whether it's in carnival and mass, whether it's in, the culture, whether it's in football, whether it's in track and field, every time you talk to somebody back home, the first thing you always hear is like, well, it's a cut up thing, or is somebody it's never just this, hey, could we all just go together and make it happen and elevate our best so that the best could pull us up and then we could all continue. And it's so sad, because you see that when we do that, we fractured, and then we are at where we are at as a country right now, whether it's sports, whether it's culture, whether it's whatever it is, because of that mentality, because we don't have a everybody in mentality. And it's funny because we talk about, sibling rivalries and national rivalries and all that. But when you really see that goes out the door is when you come to America, because when you're from the Caribbean, everybody looking at you as an outsider. So the Caribbean people in North America, if you're Jamaican, Grenadian, Barbadian, everybody bands together, St. Lucia, because this is where you find similarities. This is where you find people who could relate to your struggles, who going through, the day-to-day grind, and people in society not really helping them or whatever it is. So you have to help each other. And they talk about communities, like the Jewish community. I think they say $1 passes through the Jewish community 20 times before it leaves the Jewish community, and you see Italian communities and other communities. You see it in Toronto as well, where the communities stay together and they help each other and they support each other and all of that. And when you get up here, you start seeing it, okay, yeah, well, I'm going to go to a Caribbean restaurant. Well, I love Caribbean food, so I'm going to eat it, but that's where it brings me back to home, But you would see within those communities, they eat there first, they buy first, they support their businesses. The Chinese culture, they will come up, they will get one house, 15 of them will live, they'll band together, put their money, buy another one, they bring them, and they help each other, right? And it's everybody in mentality. And that's why I give very, very big kudos to you for that vision, for that mindset. Even with the other program, there's hope. I feel like, again, in where we are as a society, sometimes you feel there's a sense of hopelessness. I know a lot of the youth feel that there's hopelessness and there's not an ability to get forward. When we were playing, we had, so many opportunities. And I watch now, and I wish I was playing in this day and age, because the opportunities these young kids have, like Red Bull, and oh my God, everybody that was on that Soca Warriors team, everybody that's been on the strike squad, if they lived in this generation, we'd have all been millionaires times over, just because of what we had to face and the quality that we had and stuff. But we didn't have the opportunity, right? And so now you see it. So there is hope for this generation, but we have to do so much to help them and to empower them, and to, a leader is not about who I am, it's about what I could do to make others better. That's the hallmark of leadership. You see it in all the sports. When they talk about the great ones, the ones that live in perpetuity, it's the ones that have a tree under them, the ones they developed. And you see, like in NFL, Bill Belichick has his tree, and in the NBA, Phil Jackson has his tree, and this one has a tree. In football, you hear about, Guardiola, you see in his tree with Arteta and these guys now. And before him, it was the guy that he learned from, I forget he was coaching the Chilean national team. I remember he coached Leeds the other day. But you see where they start developing, What are the offshoots? And can that person go and eclipse what I did? That's really the testimony to that, hey, you know, you've developed somebody and you've helped, because they say, well, records made to be broken. So everything in life means somebody's supposed to be better. Usain Bolt should be helping the next person to go break his record. And, you know, and once you start doing that and you have that everybody in mentality, now we have a chance. So right now we need to get more of that. That if I had a chance to be able to create that and to help you create that, then I feel like we start to head in the right direction and the right trajectory for what we need to be successful.
That's so well said, Tiger Studio, because as coaches and for that player who has the hope, right? Has the hope, Tiger, in your position, what I want you to do, and I know you have a brilliant PowerPoint for us. What I want you to do, there are a lot of young players and coaches players who obviously want to get to that next level, and coaches who need to know what it takes for us to get to that next level. Can you share with us, please?
Yeah, of course, of course. You know, I always talk, again, I always go back to the people that help me and inspire me, and, you know, like even a Denzel or Martin Robertson, who you would know, you know, just talking football with him, Brennan Leacock. Before I was getting my house here, I didn't have a place, and 2 months just sat there and we talked football, and he's one of the most passionate people of Trinidad football. Or watch every game, women, girls, it don't matter. You know all the I don't even know half the players. You know all the girls on the U50 national team, you know, and just being able to share time with them and given the opportunity, they would have been amazing coaches, amazing, you know, but it's just life takes you on trajectory. So I'll share. I mean, again, it's a week, you know, we could go months and months every weekend with this type of presentation if we really try to go in depth into what is on here, but hopefully it just helps, you know, to craft a little bit of the day-to-day of what we do. So a little bit ahead of the curve here. No, it's not this one. Not this presentation. This is what did I do? Too many of them, too many presentations. Every day is a presentation.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Such a joy to while you're getting the slide prepared, you know what? Such a joy to hear you, you know, because there's so many coaches too that want to and want to take that next step and really knowing that this is the next level. This is the next level. This is the next level. This is not something that comes every day, you know?
Yeah. Hold on 1 second, Anna. I don't know why it's not. See if I could find. See that. So it's a sport company one I was doing. There's my presentation.
Yeah, but it's good in one sense because you're doing so much to help so many different people, you know, as again for making those legacies. It's brilliant. Just Saki, go ahead, please. Yes, go ahead.
You can see the screen, right?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, so this is a little bit of just, you know, formulating these ideas on what the elite player would look like and what it makes. And this is just so like a snippet of what goes into it, because again, now I am on the talent ID side and the recruitment side. So I kind of stepped away from the coaching side and the development, but of course involved in the holistic development, which is something that we would talk about a little bit more in depth too. But I mean, I watch some of these guys doing the French course, and you know, the coaches I interact with daily. I'm on the field with the academy director, just overseeing at times and just listening to what's being disseminated to these kids, and it's amazing. So when I look at, you know, the elite player, it starts with the identification, right? Like what is talent? How we identify talent? What does talent translate to? A lot of what talent and what we do now as a group is potential versus performance, right? And so what is the player's potential versus what their performance is? I will touch on that a little bit because, you know, you have early developers, you have late developers, you have age appropriate, you have, you know, certain methodologies that people might translate into that they don't translate. Messi killed us last night with Inter Miami, but we wouldn't go and sign Messi just because of our philosophy on, okay, what's success for us? Well, success for us is we had a 15 or 16-year-old on the bench who we hope to give minutes, who in, you know, the next 5 years becomes a world-class superstar. Messi helps you to win right now. We want to win in the future. So the identification piece taps into the development piece, where then you find the player, you bring them into your fold, and then you try to elevate them, create the player pathways, and then the player advancement. So for today, I think just based on everything, the first two we'll really get into in depth. The second two, the pathway, we'll just talk about towards the end, and the advancement again. And it's just kind of like a more discussion-based thing on what that looks like. So again, just a simple little agenda. These two players, so talking about it, the player on the left is Julian Hall. He's the player I referenced last night. He signed a pro contract. He's a 2008 born player at 15 years old. Funny, he couldn't even play in some of the games because of labor laws, where they weren't allowed to be on the field after 7 p.m. as a minor working. And so he turned 16, so finally he could travel and play in night games and stuff. But just great talent. Again, talent, potential, not the finished product in any way, but really blew onto the scene last year during the Generation Adidas Cup. We played Chelsea, beat them 3-0, he scored 2 goals, destroyed Thiago Silva's son and the England national under 15 captain at the time. You know, we beat Juventus, we beat like a lot of these clubs. Play on your right, Paul Sokolov, another one, top talent, but you can see different, really late developer. 10, just brilliant in terms of his IQ, in terms of what he does. And with the US under 50 national team right now, they're going to Croatia to play a tournament, one of the top tournaments annually. So these are two of the top talents coming out of our, well, one is out of our academy now because he's on a pro. Paul is a 2009. He was playing up here and we won the national championship last year. So in terms of the talent ID, this is kind of something that I had crafted based on, you know, just research and thinking about things. When you're looking at talent, you know that there's a variance of factors that go into scouting a player. And a big part of it is amassing as much information as possible, because you're trying to predict and project the future. So you have to, you know, looking at a 13-year-old and trying to say he's a pro is an impossible task, but you're trying to project what attributes, what traits he might have or she might have that will allow them to really develop. And then you still have to go through puberty, you still have to go through, you know, life occurrences and all that. And there's a brilliant slide towards talking about that we'll look at. Then, you know, it's again just trying to figure out the ability of what traits translate to the higher levels of the game, right? What things, like if it's speed, well, speed can be neutralized at the highest levels of the game. So unless there's you have Usain Bolt speed, you know, it might not be an asset that translates at 14 or 15 to the senior level of the game, but then you might be able to tell, right? Like there are some kids that have that level of speed that will translate at the next level, maybe like a Raheem Sterling or whoever. And then as they get older, you see it working against them. And that was one of the things like I talked about with Ja, trying to make sure that I didn't just rely on speed. Coaching methodologies provide scouts with a clear and defined idea of the profile. So for instance, with Red Bull, we are very specific and knowledgeable of what it takes to be in our system. Ralph Rangnick created, you know, this pressing model and gegenpressing model that Klopp has used and others have used. You know, you would have what's his name, Simeone in Atletico with his own style. You have Pep with his own style, and then you'd find people with little offshoots. So little tweaks. So like Arteta has it a little bit different to like what Pep would use. Mourinho would have it a little bit different to what Simeone would use, and who knows which one came first, the chicken or the egg. Ancelotti would have a totally different style, and you see the longevity he's had in the game. Alex Ferguson would have had. But if you understand, we have a clip for Ralph Rangnick that Sebastian Hausel always shows, and it's like, to know what you want, you have to know what you want. And so if you know what you want, we have a very defined way. So I might go see a player, and it was a hard way to rewire my brain because of what I look for traditionally in a player. Now I had to rewire it to what would be suitable to New York Red Bulls or to Red Bull Salzburg or to Red Bull Leipzig. Bragantino, even within the ecosystem, has their own little tweak. And even with Salzburg and Leipzig outside of when they play maybe Dortmund and Bayern, are probably expected to have the majority of the possession and dominate the game. So them focusing on a philosophy which is mostly against the ball doesn't do them well in 80% of the games that they play, right? Similarly, Salzburg is in a league where they win the league the entire time, but when they go into Champions League now, they have to probably adjust to what they do. So having the methodology helps you to be able to go out and identify talent. If we know what we want in a Trinidadian player, we know what translates into the best optimal performance level, then we're able to, one, define or identify players in that way and develop them in that way. And I think that's something that we're probably lacking right now. What is our culture? What is our identity? What is our methodology within the country to go and find the best players or to develop the best players in that way? So scouting variables. Again, this is the slide I was referencing. So here's where you talk about some of the potential predictors of what goes into adult high performance in football. So you would have the main four, so the physical, the tactical, the technical, and the sociological, right? And within these groups, you can see, so from the technical side, what technical attributes you look for initially? Game intelligence, your tactical skills, so your execution of technique with and without pressure. You know, how much are you scanning? What's your anticipatory ability, your decision making? All those kind of fall under the technical, tactical kind of silo. Then you'll have your physical, so your speed endurance, your agility and coordination, your endurance, your strength, flexibility, the body composition. Physically, what does that player look like and what does that translate to? Sociological, so you start talking about family support. Again, I grew up in a house, 2 sisters, so I didn't have a brother, people, or my sisters weren't playing to go and train with, so that was my friends, but my family was very supportive of what I wanted to do. Up here, you might have siblings playing multiple sports and you can't get siblings to and from events because you have to sacrifice some for the other. The hours of practice, your socioeconomic background, the area you live in, your education, your cultural background, those sociological things matter. Psychologically, like I talked a lot about the psychological advancement and growth that I had to make through the years from different experiences. What is your motivation? What is your drive to improve your coping mechanisms? I look at it right now and I feel like a lot of the generation don't have the coping mechanisms and the coping skills because it's not being ingrained in them. It's not being entrenched in them, right? The self-confidence piece, your attitude. You know, so many players don't make it because of their attitude. Top players that don't climb the ladder and the rung to where they should be because the attitude holds them back. What's your self-control, your self-regulation, and your mental toughness? And then there's subcategories of that would really kind of impact. So when you look at between physical and sociological, the relative birth date and your relative age effect. So that's something I just started getting into a lot in the last few years with US soccer, where they were talking about, you know, the time in the year, the quarter that you're born. So 3rd and 4th quarter kids, so kids born after July tend to not get as many opportunities because, again, we go with physical traits and they sometimes, one kid could be born 11 months, or if one is born January 1st and one's December 31st, the difference in what they would present as humans, as, you know, from a psychological or even physical standpoint. If you're identifying and picking young talent, you might be picking bigger, faster, stronger at earlier ages. And so you find 3rd and 4th quarter kids not having it. When we were growing up and we went with the school year after August into, you know, the next year for when we picked national teams, some of those kids had the advantage. So 3rd and 4th quarter kids, or certainly 4th quarter kids, might have had a little bit of an advantage. Place of birth. So for instance, right now, if you're born in Ukraine, going through a civil war, if you're born in Trinidad, you know, and Tobago, you're not getting opportunities because we're not regarded as a football culture compared to Brazil. I've seen so many Brazilians in this world get contracts that I look at and I was like, they're not even close, but they have Brazil attached to their passport, right? Your siblings and life events. Those are chance events that you don't control that can affect what your trajectory is in the game. External environment, so your family life, school, where you went to school. So we had Malik, Signal Hill, those used to be big schools, St. Augustine, you know, CIC, and also we had the Intercol, we had the Fatimas and the Pres and NAPS, and, you know, those schools could dictate a lot in terms of what happens. Your national association, this one hits home because, look, we just coming out of the normalization period with, with our association. So you could see how that's affected us in the last 3-4 years that we've been under the normalization. Coach education, what's the access to coach education? What does your government look like? Again, if you're in Ukraine, or if you're in Israel, or if you're in Palestine at this point in time, that affects what you're going to have opportunities to do within the game. Your development environment, for sure. What is the level of coaching you're getting? What's the level of training? What's the level of support, the resources, what the competition looks like, what your peers look like. The competition is one for me that's massively important. I get called every single day about players from back home, from the Caribbean. Oh, this player, they top. But then when you look at the competition, I see guys in the secondary schools league, a central midfielder with like enough space to build a house before a player is within their vicinity to tackle them. That is not the reality of what you would face in football out here, right? You see players where you're looking at some of the video and you're like, you can't use this video to be able to influence someone to be able to say, yes, give this player opportunity. So the higher the level, the higher quality that we can present back home to be able to now make that a space that scouts would look at, that talent identifiers would look at to say, okay, this player is playing at a certain level, this translates. We need to become so much better at that. And we had it back in the day, like, I mean, Aston Villa, and they were coming to watch secondary school games to pick a player like Dwight, Calvin Hutchinson, Russell, Leonson, Clint Marcells. All of these guys were being identified out of school leagues. And now I would say that would never happen just based on that. And even up here, it doesn't happen. Nobody going to a school football, high school football up here and picking a player. It just doesn't happen because now you have the academies and you have like the level has just increased that you're not going to go to those places to pick players. So even up here, I get videos and it's like, it just doesn't translate. And then maturation, we kind of talked a little bit, the onset of puberty, relative birthday, your genetics. People look at me and they're like, oh, like, do you go to the gym? I was like, no, I used to hate the gym, but then you had Dwight who had the genetics and would have loved the gym and did stuff. And obviously you could see where Dwight level was compared to mine. I should have done more of the gym, but just had a natural, physical quality, which we have an advantage of coming from the Caribbean, coming from Africa, coming from these places. So when we look at the talent ID, again, technical, we call these your weapons. What are the weapons that you have that can, again, be your USP that can separate you? So from the technical side, what's your 1v1 ability for your attacker or defender? Your passing range, your first touch, finishing, your scanning, right? Some of the technical qualities that really help you to be successful in being identified. From a tactical perspective, what your vision looks like. How do you press? Do you have forward thinking actions first, or are you just somebody that wants to connect the dots? Again, position specific. It might be that you play in a system that a 6 is just supposed to get the ball, keep it, and then we trigger, right? You hear some people saying, all right, when you get it first, Barca, first 2 passes, just make sure you retain possession. Then a system like Red Bull, a methodology is no, when you go forward, because the team now that has given up possession is not in a good defensive shape, because when you have the ball, you try to get expansive. So now there's so many areas you could exploit that if your first play is going forward, you have a great opportunity to exploit it. We had our goal against Inter Miami last night. That was a massive reflection of being able to do that. And then we gave up 3 goals where we gave up the ball last night. And the commentator actually said it at one point, Inter Miami Red Bull, because they Red Bull because they turn what we do and they turned it on us. Your awareness, group tactics, personal tactics. Again, physical, self-explanatory, pace, quickness, strength, agility, balance, coordination, your response time, psychosocial, your resilience, your passion, your aggression, fearlessness, and respect. We call these your special weapons. If you have, when I go to identify talent, and I could see you at the younger ages, you might have a couple of them. You get older, you might have 2 or 3. You're looking at top talents, might have 3 or 4. Within the categories, of course, you might have extras, but if you have those that can be developed and can be really tuned into something, then you have a good chance.
Before you move on, Tiger, if you go back to the next slide, one of the things, and I love what you said it, and I wrote it down here, and I wrote a big asterisk next to it. That phone call you're getting and saying, Coach Tiger, my son just played in the Colleges League in Trinidad and Tobago. My son was phenomenal, right? And what you're saying now is that if you don't hit 3 or 4 of these this criteria that you guys look for, then you don't really have a chance. But the problem, I think, is that a lot of the coaches are not sure what you look for, which I
Yeah.
think this is important, because if we only look at some aspects, you know, what I want to say to Tiger is that, and I wouldn't call the player's name, but you know, players send me their videos and so. But when you look at it, a lot of the coaches will actually say, not realistic, the defending. So how can I really judge you if the defending is not realistic? You know, so
Yeah.
so to that parent, Leslie, who is saying, my son is really, really good. My daughter is really good. You just don't know. They're getting headlines in Trinidad. What do you have to say to them?
Yeah, I mean, I've had friends, and you've had it, I know you do it all the time, I do it, that would send me something, and when I give an analysis of the player, they look at me and they say, that is the most comprehensive, most in-depth analysis I have that helps me to understand exactly where my child is. Because in their mind, you only know what you know, right? And so much of what happens, I feel like, is that one-eyed man in a blind world will always be king. And if you don't know and you don't have the willingness to learn or to know or to ask a question, you have to have the most inquisitive mind, right, to understand, because the game is progressing, the qualities are progressing. Like back in the day, I mean, you look at players now, and the hardest ones are the ones like a David Silva, whoever, because the game has become so physical. So when you start looking, if you look, I think Liverpool playing Tottenham now, if you look at the field and you look at the players on that field, you would see a certain physical composition, makeup of a player that you're like, wow, they all look similar in terms of their body type, their physical traits, their this. But then you can look into these qualities and you'll see, all right, Son. Well, you could talk about Son and go through 3 or 4 Ds that you know he has, right? Like right away. There's no questioning why he's a world-class player. Mohamed Salah, you could go through these and you would tell, right? You go through the midfielders, you go through a Virgil van Dijk, you go through, like, just look at the field and you could see these players, and right away you start recognizing how many of these weapons do they have. And once you start looking at the game in that way, then you start to realize, well, what it takes to develop a player, what are the things that we would look to identify a player. So if I go through the national team and we start talking about, all right, this player, and again, the national team has tremendous quality. You know, Angus and I talk a lot. You know, he gets a lot of like criticism for some of the things he does. Some I agree with, some I don't agree with, but we talk candidly about it. And you know, again, he's in a results-based situation. He's not in a development situation. So what he chooses to do tactically and stuff is in his mind what he needs to do to get results. Whereas it's not league play. It's not like you could develop a squad. You could develop a coaching philosophy. You have players for short periods of time. So it's a challenging thing to be in that environment. But when he talks to me now about players and, okay, well, why is this guy not getting a chance? Like, I mean, I would bring up Alvin. Alvin Jones has been hitting so many levels when he plays in these big games. You know, he scores, he contributes, he shuts down some of the top players. And then people will be asking, so why Alvin not getting his opportunity? Well, he had opportunities and stuff. Again, I don't know. I've never had Alvin in my environment or wherever it is. But there must be something within there that he's missing that is not taking him to the next level. Because when you see the performance, you start thinking, well, yeah, Alvin deserves an opportunity. I mean, Joven had it, Kevin had it, Alvin shows. So whether it's consistency through a league season, does he get up for the top games? But maybe in the run of a 10-month season, he's not hitting the marks all the time. Whether it's being just in North America, I used to struggle with it. Scott Seeley, some of us, we would be top players and not get opportunities because we're foreigners. You know, they would push a local American talent first. So there's all these things that go behind it beyond even this, that sometimes you question. But certainly you can look at the tangibles, evidence-based stuff based on these parameters and see, okay, so-and-so player, you're lacking in this. right? You have pace, you have quickness, you have strength, you have agility, you have the physical tools. But in your position, you're going to be matched up with players that have all those as well, right? So then what sets you apart? So when I talk to the parents again, what sets your kid apart? You think he has this? Well, he has this at this level and against this quality opposition. Have you seen him? What's the litmus test where you've seen him against higher quality opposition where he's able to do this consistently? Well, we don't have that, right? So what is the ability to create that to then give you a truer identification of whether his traits translate to the next level? And right now, within the context of Trinidad football, the speed of the game, at least at the school level, even the college coaches, we used to go hand over fist with college coaches coming down to recruit players. Now you don't have it. And then they would point to, Spicer going first. And again, Spicer, when you look at him for a lot of time, when he first got here, he was deficient in a lot of things, but he's grown because he spent the 4 years and all that. He would not have gone into the MLS at 17 or 18 years old. Now he has a chance at 22 years old. And at 17, 18, you're not the finished article. At 15, 16, you're not the finished article. At 22 or 23, you're not supposed to be the finished article. But your trajectory starts to show, okay, this is where maybe he has a good growth mindset. Maybe he has a good learning capacity. So he catches on faster, right? Maybe his first touch isn't the best, but then he certainly has the ability to then use other parts of his game to figure it out. What is his soccer IQ? How is he able to take certain situations and be ahead of it? When I look at Dwight was a different player to Russell. Some people have their preference for Dwight. Some people have their preference for Russell, Cristiano and Leo. But Russell, in my mind, used to see the game 5 and 6 steps ahead based on where he played, right? David Nackett used to see the game in a certain way, but different to Russell. Angus Eve used to see the game in a certain way. Denzel Theobald used to see the game or play the game in a different way to Otis Whitley. Carlos Edwards was a machine going up and down the sideline, but at youth level wasn't that, but had the capacity by maybe joining the defense force. Arnold Dorica was cerebral in so many ways that you would never understand unless you played with him. And I played with him later on, right? Evans Wise was a different machine. So you could go through different players, but within all of those, I could guarantee you when you look within the weapons, they possess multiple weapons that allow them to be able to be at the level that they did. When I go through, at a young age, again, my physical was great. My technical, I had to work on a lot. And John and them did that. Hayden Martin used to draw chalk on our boots to show where to strike the ball, right? And again, I was left-footed, so when you're left-footed, you're so reliant on your left foot. Your right foot is a walking stick, but then the walking stick had to be proficient to be able to, because then I remember playing USA and Bruce Arena and I'm talking after and saying, well, we knew you wanted to go left, so we had to shield you right. So I had to be good with my right. Landon Donovan, we knew he wanted to do anything, but we didn't prepare tactically to stop Landon. We just thought we could go play him and then he would exploit it. Or, okay, well, you know what? Trinidad and Tobago had weapons in technical and physical quality. The deficiencies probably fell a lot in tactical and psychosocial. From a psychosocial perspective, they said anytime we played USA, we didn't lose 5-0 or 6-0 to USA, never, because it wasn't a quality thing. We lost 1-0, 2-1, 2-0, because at the 65th to 90th minute, they identified that we would have players that tended to lose concentration and tended to lose focus. And so that is when they could exploit, especially with substitutions and stuff where newer players were coming in and they would come in with a different mindset. You saw it even when we played England, we were able to match up with England for 78 minutes. And then regardless of the foul with Peter Crouch, but even beyond that, when they made their tactical adjustment and they took Beckham from a right winger to a right back and brought Aaron Lennon on now to run, pinned Denzel back a little bit more because Denzel's job was to stop Beckham, who wouldn't run past you. But Beckham could deliver the same level of service from a deeper area, and that's how Peter Crouch got the header. And then Steven Gerrard scoring later on in the game. You start seeing where they identified within our football, our deficiencies that they could exploit, right? England did it. Sweden wasn't able to capitalize on it. Xhaka stood on his head. But the same goes for the individual. Where your deficiencies, where your growth potential areas and what can you do to enhance those, but certainly taking your special weapons and really elevating those, really making them something unique that you could hold your hat on, right? And the ability to develop more of these is what will set you apart. Now, if you could develop a special weapon or two within every one of these categories, then you're looking at a world-class player, right? You're looking at, if you look at Son, he has good 1v1 ability. You know, first touch is scanning, his physical, his pressing is amazing. Forward thinking a lot of the times, and certainly resilient. So you look at Son and you're like, all right, world-class talent, right? You look at certain players, and if you can go through all of these and you find it. So if I'm a coach and I'm looking at how I want to develop players, I want to take these weapons and start to develop a player in each of these categories, giving them something, because each one holds a special place within the framework of the game. And certainly honing in on one or two of these and really developing them into world-class attributes that the players could have.
Oh, that's brilliantly said. Brilliantly said. Brilliantly said. You have so many questions based on this, but let's go to the next slide. You have so many questions.
Yeah, no, we could be here all the whole night. You know that. So again, I picked a player here. We just went through a huge recruiting process with this kid. This kid, I know how old, well, it's birthday and there, so you know how old he is. But
wow.
Kid is 2009. So you look at him and his frame, he's 14 years old. You look at this kid right now. This kid looks like a professional player right now, right? He's 6'3", lean physique, left-footed center back, athletic profile, left-footed, ball playing. The questions we had on him originally, when I took the job last year, he was one of the first players flagged by our organization for me to try to go after, but he had already committed to RSL. You know, and the question was did he have the technical quality in our system to compete? He had the physical tools. How is he going to develop? Well, in a year, he's developed the technical, and we were able to see that when we brought him in the winter in an indoor space because it's tight. You know, he was able to manage himself. The questions now on him, now you have him internally, because again, we have video observations, we have live observations, we have training sessions. So again, we talk about the multiple observations that you try to get to be able to make an educated guess. The question with him lies now on the psychosocial. He's an adopted kid living in a single parent household now, biracial, you know, support system might be a little bit different than most have grown up with. So his challenges come in that area. So he has all of the qualities, all of the tools physically, working on his technical still. Tactically, of course, they need a lot of growth because they're still young and systems change, methodologies, you have to be able to adapt. But when you look at him, and I had clips from him, but I didn't include them in this one. This is a player now, you comparing a 14-year-old from Trinidad to this player. And this is just a US player. This is just a one player out of many, right? And again, we have a smaller population. Now, I went to Tobago for Shackmore did an event in Tobago. And I saw 2 or 3 players like this, right? But what is their learning environment going to be now between that 14 to 16 age group that's going to allow them, because of FIFA laws, not being able to bring them across earlier than 18, what is the development going to look like? And the US has kind of cracked the model for that, where if you go a Trinidadian and Tobagonian team, a US team, we could go into international competitions up to 13, 14 years old and compete and even win, right? But that 13, the US realized their system was like 3 times a week, play a game on the weekend type of system, where as these kids get to 14 to 18 in Europe, it cranks up. And now they're 6 and 7 times a week, multiple training sessions, video, gym. Like, so within the 4 years from 14 to 18, where the gap is created, it's because in the past, the European player used to have 720 more touch points, training periods than the North American player, because we were still at 3 times a week and a game on a weekend. Now, the Americans have found through the MLS academies, a player like this comes in the morning he does an IDP session, so an individual development plan session, based on where he needs to develop as a potential pro player. He eats at the facility. He does his schooling at the facility, and then he trains with his team on the evening. So he does 4 times a week. So that's 8 sessions. Then you would have at least 1 game on the weekend, 9 sessions. They also have gym sometime in there, right? So 10, 11. So now within a month, you're saying 4 weeks, and he has 10 sessions. That is 40 sessions, 40 touch points with the ball and within his development. So you have 40 sessions now by, let's say, 10 months a year, because you'll get, a month at Christmas, whatever it is, days off, whatever. So 400. So within the 13 or 14-year-old age range to 18, he would have 400 sessions a year by 4 years. So he would be 1,600 sessions. And if I go back and I ask, what are we doing back home? It'd be interesting to find out what their touch points are. This is even taking out the environment, like what the coaching is like, what the nutrition is like just in terms of time on the ball or time in the environment that's enhancing that. So he's going to have 1,600. I would think that we're probably somewhere around 700, maybe, if we get there. As college league again, or intercol, or secondary schools is just 3 or 4 months out of the year. I don't know what they do in the spring. I don't know, in like from January to November, I don't know what the football looks like back home. Some of them would probably be playing some club football. How much are they training? What their school looks like? So now it's almost like they've developed development centers that these kids in the academies can go and train to get all of the ability to bridge the gap between what was happening in Europe or South America compared to what was happening in North America. And that's how they systematically bridge the gap a little bit to create players that can now compete, which now when we're at 16 or 17, the Philadelphia Union U17 team just won the GA Cup, which had Flamingo in it. It had Monterrey. It had like 4 Mexican teams, Atlas, Monterrey. They had Liverpool. They had Manchester United, Arsenal. They had Bruges, a team from South Korea, some other European teams, Michelin or Northland or one of the. So 32 top European, South American, Asian academies, and a North American club won it, right? And has won it in the last few years. But again, what does that translate to next level with the senior national team? So now there's a challenge with MLS. But if you look, the US national team can now develop a roster that has all European-based players. They can develop 2 rosters of all European-based players, and not European-based players playing in Slovakia or wherever it is. You have 2 at AC Milan, Pulisic and this boy, the winger, Tim Weah. You have guys at Juventus. You have guys that used to be at Chelsea. You have guys in the Premiership. You have guys in Spain, first way. You have guys in the Bundesliga. So their players in the environment are training day in, day out at that level. And that roster that we're talking about are all 23, 24 years old, 25 years old and younger. So for the next 2 cycles, they have a roster built for that. Then you have a second tier roster that might have some that might be playing second tier, maybe Europa or whatever it is, that they could develop. Then they have an all MLS roster, 2 or 3 of those. And so the depth of what they're trying to create, because of the size of the country, which should be an advantage, is what is allowing them to be closer. Mexico used to beat them coming and going. I don't know when Mexico struggles to beat them now. They have started to create a gap between them and Mexico was the gold standard within CONCACAF for the longest while, right? But again, they give themselves a chance just based on evidence-based scientific analysis of what it takes to be able to compete as a group, as an individual, and so forth. So when we go through the identification, we will create depth charts. So again, for a coach back home, what does your depth chart look like? What does your I don't believe they're doing as much recruiting or whatever it is, or you might be going in and you start to look at, all right, in these positions, what does that look like? So for each position, we would have a certain number of players, their date of birth. So the 09s here on this left-hand side of the column is the year of birth. This is the right-hand side is the positions. And then you look at a tiered depth chart of what we have in these positions that takes our players where we need to go out to recruit, where we need to evaluate. So the player in the picture, he at the next level projects to either be a left-sided center back or a left back. With his height, with his ability to be a ball player, we think it's probably more as a center back, but could be as a left back in some. It could be as in a back three. It could be the outside of the three. You know, again, the system could be fluid, so we'll have to see what that looks like. But the depth charts and succession plan is a huge thing for Red Bull because, again, we promote so much from within the academy. So the layers are close. So the first team, second team, and the academy, you know, we have these meetings where we talk about player pathways and what a player, who's next. It's always who's next, who's the next one, how far off are they? Is it 2 years? Like we're already projecting into 2027, which players we think will be moving from the academy at 2010 year birth year where they are now. And it changes, it's fluid. We could say that now and next year that whole depth chart might be, you know, 60% different. If we're doing our jobs okay, you're hoping that is only like 20% different, right? Because you're thinking that these players, one, have been identified for certain qualities, and two, they're being developed in a way that translates. So again, you go into, you know, just these are the growth and maturation types of things that we would choose for a player. We look at this testing is done as soon as the player comes into our environment. You look at the chronological age versus the bone age. You look at the height. You look at the weight. You look at, you know, what their projected height would be, the PHVs, you know, what percent are they fully grown at this point in time. And we kind of just go through growth and maturation. So again, we might not have all the resources in the world to be able to do it, but there's certain parameters and metrics that we can use. I remember I was getting for the Trinidad and Tobago Association GPS monitors a few years back. And it was like pulling teeth because of the normalization stuff and all that, to even get in touch with them to give them. And this was sponsored free of charge. Like
I remember that quite well, Tiger.
yeah, and we didn't. We could. I couldn't even have a conversation. This was free of charge to give them. Again, can't
I
beg to have.
remember quite well.
Yeah, you know, and so data like this, you know, this is one of the parameters. So it's a mid-thigh pull, it's its strength, the explosiveness. This will give you a idea of the explosiveness of the player. And it's funny, on this, you have a defender is number one and the goalkeeper, because the goalkeeper is another one, right? And again, they're going through different, this is all U15 players. So we do this U15, we do this U14, you do this U17, all the way through to the senior teams. And this is every single test. And then every single day we track and we monitor the players, what the output is in practice through the use of the monitors and stuff. So we could periodize their training based on competition, based on load. Some players play up in a weekend, they'll go on, you know, if you have a high performance. So the next player that we might look to sign might be a 14 or 15-year-old. What's his load when he goes and he trains with the first team or the second team? How much can he take physically? How do we get him minutes, bring him back in his age group? You know, like you go through a lot of these things that kind of help you to be able to dictate what it looks like. So then now as we start getting from the identification and the recruitment piece, we start going into the development. So, and this is, again, your wheelhouse, Dion. You have so much information and knowledge on this. And certainly I lean a lot on in my last few years, because I've kind of gone, you know, executive level off the field more than on the field, but certainly sit in on these meetings, contribute based on my knowledge, based on my past in the game, and really learn. I take these to really learn and keep abreast with where the game is going. And this was a year ago, so this document is being refined now, because again, Red Bull concentrated so much of what we did without the ball. But as an academy, I would say we're the number one academy in the country. Philadelphia Union will have a shout for that. RSL will try to get in the mix there. You know, you could just look at who's developing the homegrown players that go to the pro level, and that gives you a good metric of it. But within the academy, because we recruit and we bring in the best players, and we live in such a diverse, multicultural region of the country, we have so much that we don't even need to go for externally. Our challenge now is maybe getting kids that live in New York City, because we're in New Jersey, across, where it could take an hour and 15 minutes to get to practice. On a good day, it could take 2 hours for some of these kids living in New York, but New Jersey has always been one of the hotbeds of football in North America. So we have so much talent. We have the ball much more. We play in possession much more than a Red Bull system would predicate. So we had to develop, Sean, our academy director, and his coaching staff had to develop a methodology of what we do with the ball now, as opposed to just against the ball. Because when we play games, we are now more like the Leipzig, where we have the ball 90% of the time, and we're trying to break down teams, and then also not be susceptible to what they do when they win possession. So, you know, we developed this playbook, you could say, in possession, how to move the ball, to move the opponent when they're in a low block or in a medium block or in a high block. How do we play negatively to entice the opponents out of the shape when necessary, so then we can exploit areas of space, exploit numerical advantages. How do we rest while in possession? Because we put so much output into winning the ball back. Sometimes when you have possession, that's your moment to rest, because then you want to have that innate ability to then exploit them when you need to. And then precision over rapidness in the finalization phase. So in the attacking third or in and around the box, precision becomes much more the key than the speed. So when we win it in our third, or whatever it is, the speed with which to get there is optimal. But when you get into that final third, what's the precision? What are the moves? And certainly at the academy, it's way less than it is than a pro, right? Obviously, so you see more mistakes, you see more areas for growth in that regard or whatever, but certainly you start to see the trends in what they do. So we call our central attacking zone the red zone. So we try to always dominate in the red zone, get the ball into those areas, but still provide optimal width to be able to go in, to come out if we need to, especially for teams compact as they're supposed to be in the defensive shape. How do we draw in, get wide, get them to commit, and then bring the ball back in, right? So it's in to out to in a lot in terms of what we do. How do we play fast? Well, you catch and play, right? So you catch the ball, control, play, move them to be able to shift them. It's what the City teams do. It's what the old Barcelona teams do. They did it best, right? They get the ball. It's one touch, it's two touch. It's always shifting the team, because every time you shift the team, you shift the opponent, it's a new picture, right? We always talk about in the game, pictures are created, snapshots, every single moment. The best players have so many snapshots going on in their head. They're predicting snapshots before the snapshot even happens. A lot of players are reactive, so they react to what the snapshot gives you. But the ability to change the snapshot comes with your ability to have, again, a technical quality, to have a good first touch and play and move. Players off the ball, being able to move early. So we always say if a player starts his movement when the player receives the ball, 9 times out of 10, it might be too late in this phase where you're trying to play quickly. That anticipation should be movement as the ball's traveling, because then you create options. And if you have 2 or 3 options, it makes it easier for that player to play. The explosive movements, you know, what are the runs in behind, underneath? How do you create the overloads? By your actions, by your movement. And then we have a huge premium on playing forward, look far in possession. So when I was coaching, before I even came to Red Bull, I always used to tell my teams, what's the most advanced forward pass that you can play safely? And it's not long ball. You don't have to be playing that ball in the air, wherever it is. But if I could take, with the technical qualities we have now, a center back getting a ball and playing a 30-yard ball on the ground, breaking lines into a striker for hold up play for, then we could join and then go in behind, because obviously if we win it in our third, then the space is probably behind the team, the opponents back in their half. How quickly we can do that. So not just long ball football, but how quickly we can look far in possession and be brave to break lines, right? Leo talked about it with us with the national team, where we have to be smart where we do that and how we do it. And the game's evolved a million % since 2005, 2006. So now you see it with these teams. You hardly see a team just playing a long ball from a goal kick. You see them try to build out, to draw in, attract, to break lines, and then they look to play through. So the competencies of a center back now, a defensive player, have to be so much more than in the like 90s or the early 2000s, where your job was primarily defending and you didn't have to be as competent in possession. So when we look at the attacking transition for us, attacking central, be brave, be direct. We look for overloads, 2v1s, 3v2s, wherever we can recognize the free teammate and try to exploit this. Guardiola is a genius at that, creating the overloads and finding a way to do it. Engaging the defender, releasing the ball at the right moment. So again, going back to the coaching, how do you create those types of situations and practices that get the players to get enough reps that it becomes second nature in games? It becomes innate in them. How do I move the ball to be able to create a numerical advantage? How do I create the movement off the ball in my exercises that then give us the opportunity to create those overloads? And how do we maximize when the overload is created to exploit what we've done? Your movement off the ball, as we talked about, players should be assessing when is the best opportunity for them to move. Sometimes the victim run, as we call it, where you're running just to create space for somebody else. It's not really to receive the ball. Again, you have to be selfless. Do we train these things? Or do we expect players to know? Going back quickly to when we talked about the time on the ball and the ability to get touch points. We used to have it plenty when we were growing up with sweating, right? Yeah, you go on your sweat because we didn't have the environment. So every day we were playing football. Sometimes it's in sweat, it's in informal. It wasn't crafted and created. And I would say that's the one part that the US is falling short right now, is that everything almost is fabricated. So there's not as much ability for people to problem solve, for the players to figure out things on their own, because it's all in a control environment. Can we create uncontrolled environment sometimes for our players to develop? So, and you can do it within the coaching session. You can, Ajax does it well, where they have one day, I think it might be two days a week, where the players still come in, but the coaches don't coach. So the players come in, they design either the training session or if they're just going to play football, but in the environment, so they could be monitored. Coaches don't have any input. They pick the teams, they pick the exercises, they do whatever it is. Most times they play because they just want to play. And you start realizing the nuances and things in terms of what it really takes to be able to be analytical and critical thinking in your to critically think within your environment. How you stay on the ball. So that attacking midfielders in particular, or sometimes even the outside players, keep driving with the ball until you're able to commit somebody, and then the time of release, because that can now create a numerical advantage. Like we talked about, the precision over the rapidness, right? Connect that first pass precisely, well weighted, giving you the ability to now be precise in the attacking third. You don't have to rush, right? Especially when the team is set up against you, the opponents, and they're in a low block. Now you have to be very precise because they're set up to defend, and you're also, like we talked about, not in the best position to defend on a turnover in defensive transition, right? Because you're expansive in that moment in time. And then second wave defending, so rest defense. So we're very aggressive when we have the ball in defending. So our goalkeeper, you'd see, if we're in the attacking third, or even sometimes in the middle third, our goalkeepers would be 10, 15 yards out of their box, because they almost now, back in the day, used to have a sweeper. They now become that Manuel Neuer sweeper keeper, because we're emphasizing to our center backs, our defensive players, get man to man, get 1v1, embrace that. That's where you have to talk about defending. You're a defender, you have to embrace a 1v1 battle, because you're not always going to have cover. And the way we want to press on a transition moment means that you have to be dominant in 1v1 battles. So this is now against the ball, right? Your ball recovery phase and the adaptability. So again, how do we counter press? How do we recover the ball quickly? Gegenpressing, you heard about it again, became very famous through Klopp, but Ralph Rangnick was the one that kind of architected this. And again, in that little clip that he shows, he talked about being 100% fully committed to this. He's like, it's like a pregnant lady. You can't be half pregnant, right? You had to be fully pregnant. So if you're pregnant and you're going after it, you have to go for it. So you have to recover the ball quickly. You have to go. You have to deny the counter Sometimes it might mean a foul, it might mean whatever it is, but there has to be purpose in the action. High press, you have to be very brave, you have to be aggressive. Again, all out pressing, we sprint together. Back to your theme, Dion. It's everybody all in together all the time. You gotta go. If one person misses an assignment, it could be the downfall of the entire team and it could be a goal, right? And that's just the nature of the game that you're playing now. High risk, high reward, but also it leaves you very susceptible, especially if you're playing against a top team. Our first team, the 2 games they've lost have been against the most technical teams in the league, Columbus and Inter Miami. Both times, high risk, the teams were able to play out and both resulted in losses. When the first half last night, we were fantastic. Second half, diabolical in some of our actions. Control pressing. So this is now determining, all right, is the moment there to be able to press? Sometimes you have to just pick and choose your battles. It might mean, okay, or we change a system. Maybe it might be mid-tier pressing, but the control pressure on the ball, protect the goal, compact, the principles all remain the same. And then compact, so all together again, all in, as we say, everybody in, as you say, hunt together, right? Set traps, press aggressively. That goes back to the IQ. And again, these are things that coaches can be training within their group tactics, but also within their personal tactics, right? How do I train the first defender to make it predictable for the others, right? What's the angle that they run? What's the approach? How do they slow their steps in approach? And all of these things, again, are things that I look at in talent identification when I'm looking at a player. At the academy, again, less so, but certainly when we look at first team players or potential for first team players, these are the defined details that we look at to see if that player might be suitable, or if they learn it, or if they're young enough that they can then be taught, right? And the onus is on us to teach these things, right? So again, the ball recovery and the adaptability to change the approach depending on the scoreline and point in a game when we have to manage. And I think, again, the US, this is part of where, because of sometimes overcoaching or trying to dictate to players, it becomes like a joystick coaching kind of thing, or their inability to manage a scoreline. So you see a team winning 2 minutes ago and they're still trying to play out the back. Now, I understand at 11, 12, 13 years old, because you're trying to train the mentality. But certainly once you start getting into 15, 16, 17, where it's performance-based, the results matter, people's jobs are on the lines, then certainly you have to play what the game gives you. And that comes back to the critical thinking and leadership component on the field, where if you're in a stadium, I remember the first games we played with 17s in El Salvador. They were going through a civil war and we played these games, and the only time the war would stop was when the games were going on. And we were in Estadio Cuscatlan in San Salvador, and 45,000 people when we were 15, 16 years old. You can't hear anything. There's like, because this is their release. You can't hear the coach's instructions. When you're playing in Azteca, you can't hear the coach's instructions and all that. Who are the people on the field that are able to dictate or to help the team to be able to make these types of decisions, right? Who are your players with the highest soccer IQ? Who are the players who understand and they're able to elevate the game? And if you train it enough, if the coaches empower you with the information and the knowledge enough, then at the point that this happens, they also would be able to give you what's the word I'm looking for? They'll empower you with the responsibility to be able to make that decision. It wouldn't be that they need to have to tell you to do it, or it might just be an instruction, a hand signal or something to tell you to go into a certain mode that helps us because we're managing the game in a certain way. When we're protecting the goal, we must have numbers and strength. So now if we're defending in the defensive third, we have to be compact. We need to learn to absorb pressure when necessary to, again, develop a winning mentality. Winning matters. We talk about it. Yeah, we're trying to develop players and we're trying to grow players, but winning matters. Even for me in scouting, talent ID, and recruitment, every player wants to go to a winning team, right? They want to go to a team that's successful. Everybody wants to play for Real Madrid. Everybody wants to play for Man City. Those are winning teams. It's winning cultures. So you see players leaving the environment where they're the top players and going to these places and riding bench. But you want to be in that environment. You want to learn. You want to be in the best. You want to challenge yourself against the best. So the winning does matter, especially as you get into the older ages. So the talent development, coaching principles and pressing principles, again, the all in, all together type of theme. You'll see it throughout in all that we do with Red Bulls and the everybody in, to your point. And so we break it down into asset. The willingness to go all together. Every player is involved and moving in the same direction to support each other. The sprint, right? You have to press at full speed. You have to be fully committed to put pressure on the ball to win it as quickly. If you're going half-heartedly, that's where things break down, right? Engage. You have to go all the way and not stop short, taking the last steps to engage. Sometimes you see guys, we call it shadow pressing or fake pressing. They try to make you feel they're pressing with the action because they take, 5 quick steps, but then they ain't really willing to go and engage and not sell yourself. Again, it comes down to breaking down your steps, slowing down, not slowing down, but shortening your steps when you get close. So you'll be able to adjust, for changes in direction and stuff. Like being able to do all that and learning all these things. Again, these are fine details that we need to be taught as young players in the game by our coaches. But the coaches need to know that these are the things they need to also be teaching, right? And trust. The trust to be fully committed together and take risks, knowing that your teammate has your back. Because that's another thing, right? Again, you could go and say, but I press, and then when you look around, man not there, and the
By
people,
yourself.
yeah. And if who hate that the most? Strikers.
Yeah.
When a striker, run, and he busts and he turn back and he look in, and nobody behind him. You're gonna lose him, right? You're gonna stop pressing. He will stop pressing, right? And it's hard enough to get them to press to begin with. So if you do it like a Salah and a Sadio Mane and a Firmino was probably the catalyst to that because he was so selfless in the way that he pressed. And as Klopp would tell you and Rangnick say, they didn't come to Liverpool with that mentality. It was trained as adults. It was training them, but they had the trust that the people behind them, the Jordan Hendersons and whoever they would have their back. So it wasn't that they were doing it and it didn't create an advantage for them because, again, for a striker, what they live on, goals. So they realized by doing it, if they could win it early and they get to win it in the attacking third, they had more chance to score goals and get the glory they wanted. So they're able to, they bought into the concept, right? So it's always how you sell it, how you craft it, how you create a narrative that appeals to whoever you need to appeal to. So then we talk about the pressing and protecting the goal principle. So you see the zones. So all out pressing for us happens in the attacking third. That's where we go. We, Guardiola used to have it in terms of trying to win the ball back in, I think it was 3 or 4 passes. Some people have it in seconds. You try to win the ball back in the first 6 seconds. And if not, then you have to adjust, right? Then the compact pressing and then the protecting the goal. So in the attacking third, pressing high up the field, going all the way on goal kicks, we arrange to allow the first pass, of course, so that you bait them into doing it, and then you press as soon as it's red where the goalkeeper is going. In the middle third, the compact pressing out of a mid block, which would allow the opponent under certain situations to have the ball in the defensive third, excuse me. Backline should still be high and strive to have that 25 to 35 yards. So where you see pressing fail, where you see a lot of things fail is when you get stretched. So if your defenders, especially when we look at how we identify, if a center back doesn't have the speed, doesn't have the trust to defend the space in behind us, if the ball is played over the top, they tend to try to lay back and to fall back. When they do that, now we become stretched. It gives teams more spaces and more half spaces to be able to exploit you, to break down your press. Then all of a sudden, we all now running 60, 70 yards. So you have to be brave. Even in a mid-block, you have to be brave, have to be willing to leave space behind, have to trust your goalkeeper to be able to read situations and to cover, and you go from there. The front line will make the play predictable. We talked about angles of approach and be in hunt mode and play aggressively on a pressing trigger, right? Sometimes players don't go to pressing triggers. They just run and you're like, that's not the time, that's not the moment. But again, it's stuff that we have to train. We have to really be intentional about what we do with our kids when we train in this. In the defensive third, protecting the goal, pressing in and around the box, we have to control the opponent, right? And this is where now, in the same way that we say we want to be precise, there are teams that want to be precise. So you play City in the attacking third, They're very, very precise in what they do. They create the opportunities. But certainly you've seen in Champions League where they get frustrated, where they're not able to break down because teams are very organized against them. Objective is always to have the pressure on the ball, but success may be forcing the opposition to play backwards and absorb pressure. Also have to be very selfless because you have to be able to decide mentally that we will have spells up the game when we don't have possession and we have to defend for long periods. Risk to reward or all or nothing challenges to win the ball is different than high up the field, right? Again, what is your risk to reward factor, right? If going all in, you see how penalties are given away, you see all these things because you have to be a little bit more measured in what you do in this area of the field. Aaron Wan-Bissaka is give you a heart attack every time because he always going to ground tackling and you know he might miss, right? But he's good at it, but he still gives up penalties and free kicks in and around the box. And players need to recognize what success is in different areas of the field. Around the box, strengthen numbers, move our feet, protect the goal. And yeah, if you need to interject at any point, just let me know. I just going through it.
No, this is fantastic. This is fantastic because if we don't, Leslie, Tiger, we don't be specific enough. There's a lot of hit and miss. It's a lot of hit and miss. So you go ahead, and I'll just show some questions afterward. You go ahead.
Yeah. So now I kind of going into the methodology for academy. Again, different with senior football and academy football. So again, geared to the coach, right? So the coaches have to understand learning styles, understanding what translates, what resonates with players. I remember we had players in our day that didn't pass SEA, right? So what their learning style is, how could you communicate with them in a way that resonates, that they're able to learn or to understand or to comprehend concepts? Because again, you could be the best coach in the world. If you can't disseminate a message in a way that people understand, you want to know why the player not doing it, but they might not understand and they're afraid to ask a question, right? And do you create an environment that promotes inquisition, that promotes curiosity? Because sometimes players might be ashamed to admit that they don't know. Right? That's something we struggle with. So some learning styles, some people are audio, right? They can take it from verbal communication and translate in their brain what you're asking them for, right? But you also have to be confident, be decisive, be concise. You lose people. Maybe in this interview, we might lose people because of how long it is and how verbose I could be. But if you can't explain it simply, you don't know it well enough. That is one of the philosophies we have. If you can explain something simply, then you know it at a level that you will be able to translate the message quickly, right? The visual, you have to demonstrate. You have to be able to use players to demonstrate if you can. Again, older, my knee's bad. I might need to use players now more than before to demonstrate because a picture tells 1,000 words. And then experience. The biggest learning for me a lot of times, and we go in debates on this, is players learning by doing it themselves, right? Let them play. The art of being wise is knowing when to overlook. So not always stopping every play, knowing when to allow them to understand. And again, we talk about it from getting that during sweat or in non-control environments where we were able to figure it out. You had to figure it out. If I run 3 times and a man tackle me and I try to push past him, I know, well, all right, I can't tackle him. I might have to use a body feint. I might have to use a step over. I might have to change her speed, drag, scissor, and push, right? Like, but we had to figure that out without a coach telling us or giving us the answers, right? And so you train, you teach, then you allow the experience to dictate.
And just as you're on that, I'm mentoring a coach right now, a couple of coaches, quite a few coaches, but one of the guys I'm mentoring from Miami, I was telling him that just a couple of days ago because he literally wants to correct every mistake in the game. And of course, you end up frustrating the players. And I said to him, you have to learn to just don't say anything. Just bite your lip. Don't say anything, right? Yes, certain mistakes, might be a habit, but you have to pick and choose because you want to allow the players to be able to make mistakes as well. That's how they learn. Yeah. Right? But he wanted to create everything that they do wrong. He just critical, overcritical. So I love to see that here.
Yeah, and I mean, I make the analogy of when it's a baby learning to walk, right? If every time the baby fall down when they try to get up and you pick them up, it'll take them longer to learn how to walk, right? But if you allow them I had this debate with failure. I was telling somebody so much lessons in failure, and people don't like the word failure. And I was like, but failure is what you choose it to be. I could say for me, failure would have been not making a team or not starting a game or whatever it is. That's not really failure. But in my mind, I assigned it to failure because success meant something to me. Success meant starting, success meant making the team, success. So it was black and white for me, even though it wasn't failure, it was a growth moment, right? And you could look back now and again, how you frame it might have a play with my mindset and mentality that you could call it failure and they wouldn't feel, oh, I'm a failure, I'm aggrieved, or, they take it in the wrong sense of the way that you're trying to frame it. So you might have to always frame it positively for them for like, this is a moment for growth. And so you have the other player now that you have to, you could frame it as, oh, you failed in this moment, and they will look at that as something incentivized to help them to create success. Because then you define what success looks for. And again, I think that's another thing that I think is a good segue to talk about it briefly. Defining what success is really important to the individual, to the group, to the team. If you say what success looks like, it gives a clear picture to a player on what the parameters are to feel like we have succeeded. So, for instance, one of my roommates from university coaches Hoffenheim in the Bundesliga, they fought off relegation last year, stayed up, and started the year flying. The top four, I think, at one point in time. Right now, they top half of the table, but wavered for a little bit, but went way above the expectations. But success wasn't defined at the start of the year. So when they got to the point where they were, and he started losing some games, all of a sudden there was talk of firing him. And he was like in the top half of the Bundesliga team with a team that last year was fighting relegation. I think stayed up on the last day or the second to last day. But if success was defined before as, okay, top half of the table finish, maybe fighting for a Champions League spot or whatever it is, then the perception of where he was when he was losing the games would not have been the same as what it became, because then all of a sudden they're like, oh, well, we have a roster that we're able to compete. But no, you didn't have a roster. He was way overperforming at that point in time. The team was overperforming, and now you kind of regress to the mean where you're supposed to be. So, I mean, yesterday they played Leipzig, they tied. It went to a point of we were hearing if he lost against Dortmund. Imagine losing against Dortmund would cost you your job when you were fighting relegation, which was insane, right? Eventually they beat Dortmund, and he his job, I would believe, is safe now. But again, creating a clear and definitive idea for your players in training sessions, in individually, in as a team. What does success look like in the training session today? What does success look like for you? What does success look like for us in the periods of the game? First 10 minutes, first 15 minutes, you break the game down into blocks. You're going to play the top team in the league, Hoffenheim playing Bayern Munich or this year Leverkusen. Get through the first 15 minutes. If we get through the first 15 minutes, even that's success, right? If we get through it in the lead, that's success. That's even better success. If we're down a goal, is that success or is that failure? Or is that, so crafting and being very intentional about defining what success looks like, because then players now have a truer understanding of, all right, I've done this, and maybe this would have helped us against the US, like we talked about, where they said from the 65th minute on, if we could get to the 65th minute on at 0-0, now success might be incremental in the next 5 minutes or the next 10 minutes, making sure we don't give up a goal in the next 5 or 10 minutes, making sure we get to the 85th minute, and so I think if you looked at the Sweden game, there was that measure of, okay, if we get through these 10-minute blocks without conceding a goal, we have success. Same with England, but then we gave up a goal, the goals at the end of the game.
Yeah, well said, well said. It's creating that philosophy for your club. What is your club about? What I love what you said. What is success about? You can go ahead, Tiger. You can go ahead.
Yeah, because again, success for me might be in recruitment and bringing a player, but success for us might be, well, if you bring in all the best players and we lose, then we're not having success. Again, a good segue again, when we talk about it with the coaches. Sean and I, academy director, will sit down and be like, we have to emphasize to the coaches that success is not winning and losing games within the academy framework, especially between U12 to U15. It's development, right? Your success, you're going to be more judged by how many pros you're developing, because success for our club is developing pros and creating a return on investment on these players, whether that's playing for the first team, whether that's return on investment with selling on to a bigger club or within the league. So your success, yes, winning matters. We want you to win. It's good for recruitment. It's good for morale. It's good for all of the things. But if you go into the mindset that success is winning and losing, then you start coaching games and developing players to win and not developing players to be pros. Because we see you could go into many teams and find winning teams that don't have pros. Like winning youth teams winning in secondary school football right now, but how many of them are going to be pros, right? So when you define what success looks like from a coaching perspective, we have a very different, maybe, view on success than, let's say, a LA Galaxy or a Toronto FC, who will go and buy, a Giovinco or what's the guy playing for them now, Insigne or whoever, because they want to win now. We would look at success as, oh, well, we just developed Julian Howell and sold him for $10 million to RB Leipzig or to Dortmund or to whoever it is. So when you define what success looks like, it gives you a clear picture of what you're trying to achieve. Teaching styles, again, constraints driven, guided discovery, flow, and again, the scale is great because it shows a balance, right? And where is the balance for you? These balances might be for us. Your balance could be totally different as a coach within the game. So guided discovery, coaches engage players, they guide and assist in finding solutions using stoppages and natural stoppages, right? So again, to your point, when you're mentoring the coach in Miami, it's not to say that he can't step in and do it, but you don't have to stop the whole group, right? You could go in and make a point to that player in the moment, because again, in that moment, it would be fresh in his mind, and you want him to realize, you go in, you talk to him, the game of the floor, the game is still going on, or the training session, and you could teach. Sometimes it makes sense to stop the entire group because it's something that'll be impactful to the entire group.
So, and I love what you said that, because in England, we call that drive-bys. You do a little drive-by.
Drive-by. Yeah, big drive-by. Yeah, love that terminology too. Yeah, constraints driven, so player centric problem solving approach. So when we go into IDPs and trying to develop what a player decides that they need for their growth, a lot of it we push back onto the player. You tell me, right? Like, what do you see? And then developing a methodology that's player centric to help them to solve the problem. Because again, when they get in the game, it can't be that they always turn in. It's why, some clubs didn't even want parents on sidelines and stuff, because especially when the kids are young, the affirmation need is huge. So you see them always looking to the parent. When you always know a player who's been either overcoached or isn't confident, because their first thing on instinct is to look to the sideline, whether it's to a parent or to a coach or to whoever it is. And if we find players that are doing that, especially as they get older, it will happen by nature when they're younger. That's just because of the mindset. If it happens when they get older, it should tell you a story as a coach. If a player keeps looking to you for affirmation, it means that you're probably overcoaching that player, right? And so you start to develop what is the right balance. Again, everything is balance, right? And then coaching in the flow, the emphasis on individual feedback while the activity continues, like we talked about. And coaches, you can influence the tempo of a training session by what you do with stoppages. And I know, and most of the coaches play the game. The one thing that drives the player crazy is when you're stopping the game or stopping training all the time. Like players just, they tune out quickly, they do that. And there's moments when you need it. Oh, you see a guy stopping and having a 5-minute diatribe in the middle of a session about something. No, again, there might be a time and a place for it. And there's instances where it's impactful. But if that is your coaching style throughout the time, I could probably put my head on a block and say that you probably lose players quickly, or over time, because it is the one thing that drives them bonkers, being a player and certainly knowing it. There you come on. So let's make sure it's the right start. Yeah. So then you go into talent development and the principles. So from a coaching perspective, I think this is one of the key things is for your own personal development, and the principles is your planning and your preparation. And I was very, very bad at this. And I remember going into US US soccer in the A license and them talking about it and me check and challenging them hardcore on this because before the advent of Team Snap and all these things, and even with it, I could say I'm going to run a session for 18 players and I'm going to do it and all that. Now, in the academy environment is different because these kids don't pay to play in America. They come in, they're driven. There's a pyramid where they know they want to get to the top, so they show up. But even the things come up, right? Things arise. But in the pay-to-play model where there's a certain level of, well, I pay so I could go when I want to, I will do when I want to, whatever it is, and there's no real accountability in some settings, you might design a session for your midfielders and two midfielders out of your three and show up to that session, right? So when you're planning, you have to be more adaptable in some of the youth spaces than you would say in a pro environment where everything is defined, everything is set up, everything is you have a strong awareness and knowledge of who will be there, what you can train, what you could do. So in these environments, you have to be very, very defining this. You'll always see the top coaches going out and they set up their fields early, they're there early, they're running the sessions through their head. You could tell they're prepared so that they're still gonna make mistakes in the session. They're still gonna have moments of gaps. Sessions might switch. I remember Bertel used to be the one who was the greatest. Bertel would change sessions like 5 times within the session, because he would see something and then switch and pivot and whatever it is. And we used to just love it because we just laughing. Because he might have been starting the session with the defenders and the midfielder make a mistake and we switch and then the midfielders. And so that would drive this generation crazy and certainly in certain environments. So you plan and you prepare, you execute and you reflect. Because again, you will find gaps within what you did and you can always take learning and growth out of that. So plan the session, learn the objectives, lay it out properly, correct use of the constraints, communication, the instruction, age specific stuff, concise. I remember Jai used to tell us all the time, the ABC, audible, brief and concise in your messaging, not long-winded. Limit coaching the player in possession. Again, no joystick coaching. Give them inspiration, promoting intrinsic motivation, encouraging and promoting the hard work, the qualities that you want to be displayed when they go into a game, right? If you promote that within practice sessions, you will see it come out in games. And then developing that human relationship. I would say that's the one piece I missed the most with not coaching as much as that human relationship. I still have it a lot, especially the players that I deal with in high level recruitment, because you develop that bond with them and their families. But certainly on a day-to-day, the coach has such an impactful role in the lives of these kids and developing that trust with them. And I get it because parents trust me. I remember coming in and being Black and Black parents reaching out to me right away to be like, hey, having you in such a role is so impactful for my kid because they see somebody that could be a mentor to them, and we want you to be, to be there for them. And then you also have, the safeguarding stuff with safe sport and making sure with minors, you're very careful about the interactions and stuff. So it's changed a lot from when we were growing up to now, but there's still ways to do it. All right. And then just from a micro tactical periodization standpoint, you look at, this is how we run our microcycle. So you start with your game, right? So the game plus 2, so 2 days, the 2 days after the game, you come back into training, and the training is very position specific focus, IDP, so individuals, they very focused on individual base. Your minus 3 days, so 3 days before the game, it's philosophy based. It's on what we want to see from a Red Bull team within the game, and you develop your sessions accordingly. Match day minus 2 would be philosophy based, but with a focus on the individual. Like, okay, this is how you fit into what we're looking to do when we get into the game. Minus 1 is game preparation, your finalization phase. You might go through your set pieces, you go through some walkthroughs, you go through the things that would be very applicable within the game, and then the game. So that's your cycle. We have a huge layer of support again that back home, we might not have all of this as yet. Certainly with the national teams, you'll have the goalkeeper coach, strength and conditioning, video and data analysis. I don't know if we have an IDP coach, so the individual development planning coach. Psychology, I remember with the strike squad, I used to be a ball boy for the strike squad in some games. They still mash me up for it. some of them guys is crack jokes on my head. Because I had one with the Shell Cup where it's a big ball on your head. They didn't know who it was, but then when you go in the
I
dressing,
remember that. I remember that.
but I remember the strike squad had Merlin Rod Otley, I think she was her
Yes,
name.
Doctor. Yeah, Doctor Rod. Yes,
Dr. Rod, she was there. I know Ian Hippolyte, Dr. Hippolyte has been involved at sometimes. He does stuff with my daughter, the track one Rayan, with Memphis Pioneers. Over time, it's a huge component. And now you talk to college coaches, and they tell you with the way that the fragility sometimes now with these kids and the coping mechanisms and how they, or the lack of coping mechanisms and how they react. Sometimes I was talking to a college coach, and she was telling me on her staff they have more psychological coaches on traveling sometimes on game days than they have support staff, which is crazy. And then certainly the diet and nutrition and player wellness. So this is a big one for us. We don't have it right now. We're trying to work through some people to kind of create that, because it's a massive part. And certainly, when we look at back home, our diet isn't the greatest, and so, cost of diet, some of the things, but you look at the players and you're like, oh, some of these players, they living on doubles and KFC, and
yeah,
that
so true.
that is not preparing you. And even the kids up here, kids are the kids, man. Like, we have proper food. They eat the same food that the first team will get, they get. And just this week, they're asking, oh, can I order Chipotle? Can I order this instead? Because they don't like the food. And, so it's always a challenge, but certainly if you look at your body as a temple you need to create the optimal performance for, then the diet is necessary, and certainly player wellness. Like, we have a guy kind of with the first team sometimes where you start to deal with different languages, and we have Brazilians, we have guys who don't speak English, so they go through their lessons in English, and just having somebody to be able to communicate with them. You have homesickness. I remember, again, to being in Holland, people not talking to you because you're coming to take this spot, and trying to learn the language and trying to do things that help you. So you need a player wellness person. This is probably optimal, and I'm sure there's other support things that we could put in there that would really help you. And then again, these are some of the training and game non-negotiables that we have in place. And again, you can choose and look at what is specific to your environment as a coach. So certainly in our style, in possession, the tempo which we play, you often hear the coaches, advocating to increase the tempo, right? A commitment to playing quickly, two-touch when you can, but also giving them the freedom, because it depends on where you're on the field, right? And if you have a player, again, whose weapon is 1v1, you want to isolate him or get him into a place where 1v1 is, he can use his strengths. And I always used to say, when we talk about numerical advantages, it's not necessarily player numerically, because Messi in his heyday, Messi against two was a numerical advantage for Barcelona, because Messi could still destroy two. So it would look like it's a disadvantage in 1 versus 2, or even 1 versus 3. But that was a numerical advantage for Barcelona. So it's not always a numerical in your favor by numbers. It could be based on the player. So if you have a 1v1, or it might be a player like Evans Wise could beat you in a phone booth back in the day. 1v2, it was an advantage for him, right? So yeah, you look at these things. The aggressive nature is a non-negotiable for us. Players come into our environment and we give them 4 or 5 days, because the first day is just overwhelming. They've never trained at that intensity. They've never trained at that with that level of aggression. You see kids, and I remember the top clubs in the world, they tell you training was harder. Chelsea used to say training was harder than your game, because the training was at such a level and such a quality. I think Dwight used to say to it, Man U, that when you go into a game, the game was like, well, okay, especially when you're playing a lower tier team, it was easy. But when you're fighting for spots and you're fighting to create a chance for yourself to start in a game, your training sessions really give you a true barometer of what it's going to look like when you come to game day.
Sorry, and like you mentioned earlier, Tiger, like you talked about Mo Salah going into Liverpool and not, hey, I'm going to be a little bit laid back. Nope.
Yeah.
You're going to press. And so I love how as you said, the non-negotiables, because a lot of Caribbean players, again, if we look at the earlier slides, you know, out of those four things that they look for, the scouts look for, people like yourselves, if one of them is that I'm not willing to work hard, you know, I'm not willing to put myself about, you know, because I'm too cool for school, you know, they give it to me. And that, which is always a problem with the Caribbean player, you know, not willing to put themselves about a bit, you know?
Yeah. It's funny because everybody frames it in different ways, right? Keith Luclo used to frame it in one way. Bertel used to say, if you don't prepare to run, you can't play football, because then my grandmother could play football if you don't have to run, right? And I watched with one of my daughters now the other day, I'm playing with her, and she don't want to play, but technically she just decided to kick the ball around with me and her brother. And she has such great technique, but never play any game, but she will not run. So she's not going and play football, right? And our academy director says it all the time now, like in football, you could be as good as you are, you could be Messi, but trust me, Messi used to run. He might pick and choose, but you have to be able to work hard and to run, and it will come in different ways and at different levels. But the ability to carry a player or two now in modern football, the days for that, they're done, you know, like you have to be able to, unless that player gives you so much quality when they have the ball that you can work around it. And you could count the players that do that on one hand. Kylian Mbappe runs, you know, Cristiano Ronaldo will still run. Like they don't run as much. Messi will run, doesn't run as much, but he'll give you moments, 5 yards where you will press it. Have to be able to, but what they give you on the ball, you'll be able to sacrifice. And I remember Zidane used to say he gave the most credit to Makalele, because Makalele used to tell him, no, you stay up there. I will do this for you, because what you're going to do up there is going to be enough that I'm willing to sacrifice. So then you had your N'Golo Kantes and Makaleles and those types, Gennaro Gattusos, that would do so much. Edgar Davids. I became that type of player at one point in time. I used to run because I knew what Dwight would have given us or Russell would have given us. So, you know, some of these players. So I was willing to put in the work for that because the success that would bring. But nowadays is a little bit different. They still have to give you, and certainly you would see it if you look back. I mean, Dwight was a machine. Dwight would run relentlessly when he had the opportunity to, right? Dwight was always the fittest, whether it's Man U or with us, you know, and I used to be right up there because that was what my game was, or the Chris Burchills, that's what the game was predicated on. You know, the decision-making, reinforcement of the importance of making the right decision and at the right time, you know, the technical execution. And then against the ball, that aggression, being proactive, your counter-pressing movements, your recovery runs back into the game. There's some videos I could show you with players who are so selfless that they trigger all we do. They might be a pro in any other system outside of Red Bull, but in a Red Bull system, their value is so high because of what they do when we don't have the ball. And then how you protect the goal. So again, as a coach, create your non-negotiables and make them known and reinforce them. And, you know, to play for me, these are non-negotiables, to work for me. And, you know, again, you have to be malleable in certain ways and be willing to bend and break, bend in some regards, but that's totally based on the quality, and the quality will speak for itself. So a player is quick to recognize right away if you're bending for another player. Like we would bend for Dwight, but Leo was certainly very much about everybody being equal in so many aspects. But just from a player perspective, we would bend because we knew what Dwight could bring to the table or Russell could bring to the table. And that now comes internally within the group as opposed to being forced onto the group or any of those types of things. So then I went from that into a little bit of the talent development with the player profiles. Just make sure I didn't miss a slide here. Yeah. So I accompany these with videos. So then again, this is for us, like the goalkeeper. So it gives a little bit of, you know, just in terms of a profile, what we might look for. So this again, when we talked about there's hope and talking more to the players, a lot of this will be applicable to them. It's still for the coaches as well too, because they can nitpick on these and choose what they think, you know, and certainly some goalkeepers some people used to put a shot premium on a shot stopper, and now you see the shot stoppers kind of going out the window because they want ball playing goalkeepers, and so the Edisons and these guys, David Rayas, have become more prominent. But you see it with Man United. We went and get Onana, and now, you know, some people, well, we should have kept De Gea, right? Because De Gea give you so much in terms of winning points and stuff. But anyway, you know, for us, you know, a goalkeeper that could come in and take the challenge for the #1 jersey, this is what we look for. They already have a level of experience at the senior professional level. So this is now with the professional team, this is what we look for. It would be different again for youth, certainly height. And in Germany, it's a thing. If you do project to be a certain height, you can never be a goalkeeper in Germany. So Jorge Campos would never have made it in Germany, right? But not to disparage what Jorge Campos did. He was a fantastic goalkeeper, right? Maybe a Higuita would have never made it. But that culture, those places had a different premium on what a goalkeeper looked like for them. A backup goalkeeper, you know, is your 1B, looking for a roster spot, very much a developmental. So we have 2 players now that are backup goalkeepers for us that are 18 years old, I think. One's 18, one is 19, I believe. And they serve as number 3 and number 4 on our depth chart for the professional team. And then we have another one that would probably, one that signed already, that's a 16-year-old, and another one that might sign, that's a 2009. So when we succession plan, again, we're looking at who's going to block pathways. So I wouldn't go in and bring in a 23-year-old goalkeeper unless his trajectory looks to be as high or higher than the ones that we have already, especially in that position, because it's specific. It's just one player that gets the playing time. What they do in possession. So obviously, you know, you can go through that with what you choose to value. So what's your competency with the ball, your distribution, that's varied, concentration, moves with the game, what they do out of possession. So shot stopping, we always joke, you have one job, don't give up goals, you know, and that's not just on you, but you can certainly help it by your communication, by how you position yourself, how you position your team. For us, again, our aggressive starting position is important, but for some teams, it's not. Some clubs, you know, staying connective, spatial awareness, decision-making under pressure, because we invite the pressure maybe to go in behind. So that's our goalkeeper profile. We have a little video here I would show. So you'll see this goalkeeper, if you could see it, you know, a save and then back up quickly, making another save.
Yep.
You know, coming off, closing the angle, makes a good save again. And these are young players. These are, I think this was a U15 goalkeeper. So you see again his frame, what he looks like at 15, anticipatory, clean save, and then looking to get up and go. So you see in there, like, just based on the profile, like, good shot stopper, aggressive. We didn't really show the ball on the feet in that clip. You know, distribution we didn't see, concentration, he moves with the game, aggressive starting position. You can see when he made the save coming out, he was high, you know, not on his line, then starting to go. Spatial awareness on that one save that he made, understanding where he was in the goal, and then footwork, the ability to save the PK. So you could, you know, you see just in moments some of the things you do. For fullback, you know, somebody with an attacking mentality, able to cover distances at high speed. So, I mean, in our environment right now, Carlos Edwards would have been a premium. We would have been going after somebody like Carlos tremendously. Obviously, you went to play in England, so you would probably not consider Red Bulls, New York at least, as his option, but certainly with Leipzig or Salzburg. And congrats to Ipswich, they just got promoted again. So, and Carlos and my boy Jamie happy.
Yes, so that Carlos was posted on Facebook this morning.
big moment for them after that. So, you know, the creativity in his game, Carlos certainly developed. He had it because he was a creative player, and then I think again with the defense force, he developed so much of his engine and his, you know, they used to call him the Rolls Royce over there. Just like the ability to cover ground was immense. As compared to like a Avery John, who was more of a sit back, hard nosed, tackle you kind of defender. You know, a Marlon Ross was kind of a hybrid of the two of them. He could get forward but certainly would tackle with the same type of intensity.
And I could interject here a little bit with something Carlos told me. He said, you know, a few things. I'll tell me some things you pick up, you know, being in the Premiership. And one thing he said to me, I never forgot it. He said he learned that 98% effort is always equal to 100% failure.
Yeah.
I never
That's
forgot that.
so true. So true. So true. Yeah. 90% will equal 100% failure. Yeah. I mean, like, such a prudent thing, right? And you pick up these nuggets, and now I will use that as well too, and that's the beauty of this, right? And we know that we just always learn off of each other every single
So
time.
true. So true.
Yeah. So yeah, it just goes through a little bit of the fullback, in possession, whether you're A or B. So again, whether you're a more attacking minded one, like a Trent Alexander-Arnold or Robertson, or you're Aaron Wan-Bissaka.
So just let me interject here a little bit, Tiger.
Yeah.
I know we've been going for quite a bit. So the other slides you just skim through, but just
Yeah.
let's on this one. If as a player, and I say this with the utmost respect, you're not getting this specific things that you need to work on, all right? How are you going to make it in the Caribbean if you're not sure what do I focus on based on, as you say, position specific? What's my individual? You asked just now about, who's the person doing the individual development plan for these players, and it's a serious question. I have to say that as nice as I can.
Yeah. So again, now it's how much are you willing to invest in yourself? How much are you willing to go and look at football and look at, do your research? Now the internet gives you.
Sorry, but yeah, I agree with you. But what about the player who still does not know what to look for? Because they know, obviously, with technology now, they all have cell phones, they all have iPads, they all have the internet, but they're not sure what to look for because they've never been trained in that way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that again, the onus is on us to be better as coaches, to be better as people, to start disseminating this, or to have more of these types of forum where the players are exposed to it, where they get knowledge of it, or to provide resources for them to be able to, right? Like, you can go on to an internet search and look for, just type in profiles or traits of a attacking fullback, or profiles or traits of a defensive fullback, profiles of us. Like, you can use the resources at hand if you are willing to invest in yourself now. And we, again, it's not minimizing or taking away. It's our responsibility to pass this on to them. That's why in our environment, all these things are documents and things that we coach and we pass along. But to your point, back home, they might not be getting that. So how can we give it to them? Or how can we provide them with resources? Or how can they now have to take it upon themselves? Just like Denzel and my conversation, at some point, if you feel like you're not getting it, it's like if I'm not getting food and I sit down home, my parents are making food, I'm just going to sit down and not eat food, or I'm going to go out and try to find it on my own, right? And so a big part of the responsibility now, even with the coaching and with the knowledge and all of that, falls on a player to be able to go out themselves and try to learn and try to be students of the game and try to not let a disadvantage from where you live or where you're born or anything hold you back. Because look at how many of us born in the same place coming through. So I don't think that the coaching we were getting back in those days was so much far more superior to some of what these guys getting now. I think it was good for what we needed, but I think we also had this growth mindset and we watch a lot of football. I remember that was the agreement with my parents. I could watch English football on a Saturday. I could watch Italian on a Sunday, and I could watch European roundup on a Monday night, as long as I did my schoolwork and all of that. But so I learned about Jape Papan, and I looked at forwards and Dejan Savicevic and Boban and these guys with Red Star Belgrade, because I had a mindset where I was all into understanding what it took to become a pro. So I can't just sit on my laurels and blame it on that person not being there. Now, again, I harp on that. It's still our responsibility, and it's our responsibility as coaches to be better and to learn more and to go and find these things and to reach out to people. You have Shaka, you have myself, you have people coaching at the highest level, you have Dwight, you have all these people, and maybe some people have less of a willingness or less time or whatever it is. But certainly you have people in areas, in colleges and universities that will be privy to this type of stuff that you can learn from. Dion, if you used to sit back, and I would take you as a prime example, and just say I in Trinidad and think you used to go to Liverpool, you used to go to I don't know how you make the connection. I don't know what you used to do, but I know that you took it upon yourself. That
Well
was
said.
not giving you a Dion,
Well
I think
said.
it could be good for you. You went out and you did it, right? You went out and you found and you made these connections, and you still do it to this day, right? And that is your mindset, that's your growth, that is your intrinsic drive to be able to better yourself and to do that. So if you take yourself as a prime example and you pass that teaching onto the kids, or at least the mentality. So I think
Yes.
what we have to treat or change is training mentality. Because if you're training mentality right, they wouldn't allow anything to stop them from going out to seek more. They
Sorry,
would go.
Tig, let me say this. Let me say this to you. I was talking to some players recently, and I said how much you love the game. Oh, I love the game a lot. I love the game a lot. I love the game a lot. I say, you sure? Coach, I really love the game. I want to be another Dwight York, another Russell Latapy, right? I said, okay. I said, what about training at 5 in the morning? Coach, you crazy or what? You have 5 o'clock in the morning to go and train? I said, you just told me how much you love the game.
Yeah.
And you know why I said that? I know it because when I was living in Colorado, I had players who get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, we train, and then they go to school.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
I mean,
so just talk a little bit about that sacrifice, Tiger, please.
yeah. So, I mean, again, I had predicated so much of my game on being fit and ready and always ready for opportunity. Because I was in my mind, I would never miss another opportunity. And so I was one of those that would get up I remember again, because my parents were like, all right, if you want to watch TV, you want to go online, you have to do your schoolwork and things. So if I stayed up late, I knew that I had to get up in the morning to do my schoolwork. So I would get up at 4:35, go run, do the savannah a couple of times, go run, and then come back, do my work, and then go into school. Now, sometimes by about 1 o'clock, I used to be falling asleep in school, but I was doing my work because I was making the sacrifice because football mattered to me. Bertel is talk about Dwight all the time. Dwight, like, bang, you just used to be hearing him hitting the galvanized. Stern John, I mean, Stern and I have our disagreements about football in terms of what you have to do to be able to get to motivate. But Stern was one of the best trainers that you would ever see, would stay back with ball after ball. And I always give him the credit for that, right? I mightn't tell him all the time, but I always tell him, I always would reference him because his mentality to working extra, to being the first day and the last to leave. Dwight was the same. Beckham was the same. Cristiano Ronaldo. You look at the ones in the game, Messi is the same. And again, in that Ralph Ranick clip that I referenced, sorry, I don't have it here. He talked about that. When you train and you have that philosophy, you can tell these players training is 1 o'clock in the morning and they wouldn't blink. They would all be there at 12 o'clock before on the field doing stuff, because at 1 a.m. they'll be ready to train and then they go back. They're not asking if you're crazy, if you're mad. That was just the mentality because they trust their buy-in and they want to be better. So I say now, again, when you talk about, okay, well, we only train 3 times a week or whatever it is, well, then it's on you to get 4, 5, and 6. It's on you to go out and do it. When you develop is not what you're doing in your training environment, is all the things that you do outside, is how much video, how you take care of your body, what you eat, how much extra sessions you get in. So sometimes now we have to pull back players because we don't know what their training load looks like when they go on their own. But some of the best ones in the academy right now, they have personal trainers on the side. They have this. Because to give yourself that advantage, you need to go above and beyond. You have to. Like, if you love the game, as you say, you love the game, you love food, you eat. The food come in front of you all the time, you eat, right? Like, so, I never see a man who love food, and when the food come, he ain't eating, right? So, so they have things that when you love, you go the extra mile to achieve it and to do it. And so that is a simple thing within the game. I think that sacrifice, the willingness to sacrifice, is simple. Yeah, I'll go through some of these slides as you say quickly, just showing some of the clips, and we wouldn't even have to go through, but this is just a training module. You see how the field set up, and it highlights the player. Look at his willingness to get forward, right? After the play, run, get beyond, and then now can he deliver, right? Again, not just a cross, he looked and he tried to find somebody. This is against the ball a little bit, how he presses, get there, commit to winning it back in a high area, and then, look to create a goal scoring opportunity. Inverted, you've seen a lot of inverted fullbacks now. So where you go across, try to create a numerical advantage, lose the ball. How are you going to? You jockey first, set him up, go win, right? So just simple things again that you can look at as a player within video, within seeing the top players in the game. These next ones just show a little bit of cover and recovery runs, the willingness to make tackles, right? So we'll go past that. Center back, same things. You could go in different center backs. You have a Lissandro Martinez versus a Rafa Varane. You have a robust one. You have one that's a ball playing one sometimes. Sergio Ramos and Rafa Varane for Madrid is one of the keys. Rio Ferdinand and Vidic, where you see the one that's the ball playing and the one that's the more robust. Just again, traits that you can look and see. Within the game, certain qualities that you have to have, right? If you're a ball playing one, this is one where you're showing, look at the aggression, forechecking to get in front, being able to play in the 1v1, right? Like we said, when in our system, you have to be able to defend 1v1. Again, all in, going into win the tackle. This was against Philadelphia Union. Again, you could see it's at their facility. And I think this is like 12 or 13-year-olds. You could see just the mentality is trained throughout all of the age groups. I think it's 12 or 13 because you can see they're playing 9v9. Right. And so this other video is like a second defender. I think this is like your ball playing defender, comfortable on the ball, good feet, willing to break lines. That line just broke 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people. And now it transitions us into offense just by that one pass. All right. Central midfielders as a 6. Again, what are the profiles? A protector, whether you're one of those like Kante and stuff who is just there to protect or whatever, or are you a PLO who's going to like be the one to trigger attacks from deeper and stuff? So you have different ones. Again, just quick, you'd see where the areas that you occupy. Are you a defensive minded one? Are you a ball playing one? So they again one that can play out of pressure and create the attack. So you can go through these again. We just kind of go in 8. What an 8 looks like. Is it like a Edgar Davids? Is it somebody that they play a dual 6 and one is just a little bit more advanced but still has a defensive mindset? Are you a 8 who's a more attacking minded 8? This is at our facility. You see good in transition, willing to step in, make tackles, and then bam, turn attack into defense, be able to drive with the ball, keep on the ball, stay on the ball, finish, right? So like just understanding what your role is, connect the dots, able to spray passes, do certain things that you need, but also willing to work both sides of the ball. So that's our 8s. A 10, midfield general, what your 10 looks like. Obviously, first touch, combination play, trickery, penetration, the speed with dribbling, decision making. The 10s are the ones you find the biggest challenge, even more than the forward sometimes in terms of wanting to defend. A 10 feel like they don't have to defend because Maradona and Messi and all of them, but the 10s have a huge role to play now, especially in neutralizing the other team 6 if they're playing with 3 in the middle. Just being willing to give us that extra layer of protection and cover, but certainly more of your responsibility. You can see that player scanning already, looking for the ball, check into the pocket, and then the ability to create an opportunity just with his pass in action and with his ability. He's a 10, he drops in deeper to get the ball, so sometimes your 6 mightn't be. You look, he scans, you see him scanning again, looking, check his shoulder, go in and looking to try to break the lines. And then you run training activities to help with creating that for a 10. So 10 finds the pocket. This is with low pressure, but now in an area in the red zone where they have a chance to create an opportunity. So you can develop training modules that will allow you to be able to do that. I think this is a 10 just against the ball, winning the ball, and then transitioning from defense into attack. All right. And then your wingers, obviously, very good in 1v1 situations, good with crossing, brave, again, this is a recovery where he's coming back into the play, finds a little pocket internally, turn inside, and now you have this, especially with the advent of the inverted wingers. So many of them that want to go inside, as opposed to back in the day, the chalk on the foot, chalk on the boots wingers that you used to have in England, where Ryan Giggs and those guys can Chelsea kiss and them stay wide, and then they get down the wing and they cross. So you'd have the inverted, and then you'd have the ones that tend to stay wide. This one is a profile of one, I think, that's a naturally right-footed player, speed, power, the ability to get in. You could see his head up already, head up looking. Didn't get the cross off, but you could look at what he was trying to do. So that was the execution more than the final product. Very good with the feet, good finish, and you play. So again, just and then strikers, of course, you have one job: score goals. We we could talk about all sorts of things, but 1, 2, and 3 responsibility is score goals first, and then we could talk about all the other things that they do in defense and all that. But certainly, what are your qualities to be able to score goals? Whether it's your final touch, the composure, how do you get in behind, whether it's your movement. We did an IDP with one of the strikers the other day, and we were telling him about if you continuously are able to see the defender's numbers, then you're probably in a good spot, because they don't know where you are, and you have the ability to now make the runs in behind, across the lines, across their bodies and stuff. So we talk a lot about that when it comes to the strikers. So then we just go. And then play a pathway. So just creating pyramids for them, right? So this is ours. Obviously, they have different pyramids. So we start with the ages 3 to 16 with the development programs that we create. Camps, clinics, coach education starts from that early with us. Club development. So we have affiliate clubs that we partner with, and we do coach development with them, coach education. That's where our selection starts with those clubs, doing a lot of outreach, galvanizing the marketplace that we're in to give us the best chance to find the best players. Then you go up to the regional development school. So we become a little bit more proficient in this with the 7 to 8, 7 to 14. This is where you're finding your talent now, developing them, and same thing, talent ID centers, showcase teams, because they're starting to get to the age where they come into the academy, which is like U10 and U11, pre-academy. For us, pre-academy now is we just went to funding pre-academy fully. Before this they had to pay. But now our U12s and under to our U11s, some of the U10s, it's the club pays for all of their programming, I think, outside of like uniforms and maybe a couple tournaments. But they don't have a cost. Then the academy, this age group actually is changing. The top one will change to U18 and U16 next year. There'll still be a U15, because what we had found was the league saw that at 18, if you went to 17s, they still had a year of high school left, that they came out of the academy system. And so you're kind of like trying to early predict important year of puberty, not puberty, of development, where that player could fall. So now it gives them an extra year, especially with Red Bulls, where we don't have a U19 or U21 team. Essentially, our second team is a U21 or U23 team, you could say. For a player at 16 or 17 to make the jump to play against 23-year-olds, I mean, we had to do it by default. But certainly now with development and how it is, you give them the extra time that you can. Your next pro team for us, that's Red Bull 2, and then the first team. And then Pyramid will go beyond that now into Europe, with Salzburg, Leipzig, Bragantino in Brazil, and certainly beyond that, wherever you want to get to. And then I think that's it. The other part would have been the advancement piece, which again is just talking points and stuff. So that is essentially a big part of, for us, what we do, but also how we could touch on a lot of things that the coaches, and in particular the players. Obviously, when we do the players, we could go more into the player profiles with them and talking about some of the things that they need. But certainly the coach, for the intents and purposes of this, is really to give them some ideas on what we do, and certainly they would have their own things. And there's no cookie cutter model. Like for Trinidad and Tobago, we'll need certain specifications because of where we are climate, different external factors that would predicate field access, all these things. So it's just really more about the mentality and understanding some of the qualities that we look for that you can now start developing within those players that would help them to have success.
And for a coach, it's not just about having the information in your head. Put it down in black and white. Strategic plan. What do I want from what do I want the players from this age group to that age group? I remember, and I'm not going to call the coach's name, but I asked for a curriculum. He said, "What? Success, big coach in school, no curriculum."
Yeah.
So what are you working on?
Yeah, just haphazard, vice, just whatever.
And that's sad to say, Tiger. It's the majority here. And it's not so hard to do. It's not so hard. You can do it weekly, you can do it monthly, and then start developing. Eventually, you'll have a yearly curriculum.
Yeah.
So it's really, really. I mean, it's so wonderful to hear you talk, Tiger, because don't stop telling ourselves that we're from the Caribbean and we can't impress and we can't do things in the right way. But just do it from a more scientific point of view, which is a whole nother thing in itself. And Tiger, I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit. Some people feel that only because you play the game, you can coach the game at a high level. Please share a little bit about that.
I think it's more challenging for an elite level player, top level player to coach than somebody who was a good player, with good ideas and good, that had a good career. One, the elite level player, their mindset and their qualities, their abilities are at such a high level intrinsically without even having to maybe put in the work, that they see the game in a different way. Their expectations are very different, wherever it is. And especially in terms of coaching youth, to be able to disseminate that message and pass it on and to teach is very hard, because it's the same as, yeah, well, I go to a dentist, I can't be a dentist, right? Like, I can't be a doctor just because I watch ER or I watch Grey's Anatomy. Like, there's a certain level of having to learn how to coach, having to learn. Teachers go to teachers college. We went to school all our lives. I learned economics and maths or whatever it is, but you still have to go to teachers college to learn how to teach. The ability to pass information along is a skill. It's a craft. It's something that you have to learn. So just saying that I played at a high level, I could coach, is not enough. And you see it, like if you go through the top players who have successfully transferred into coaching. Guardiola was a great player, but not elite. Zidane might have been the most elite one. Ancelotti was a great player, but not elite. Michael Jordan was a great player, couldn't do it. Magic Johnson couldn't do it, because it's much harder to do that, because to teach is a specific skill set, and continuing education is a specific type of knowledge and desire that you have to have.
Mindset.
Yes, you must have a growth mindset, because the game will go past you. Everybody learning, Pep Guardiola learning when you see him tweak and things, it's not because he ain't learning, he going and he reading and he looking and he analyzing so you have to have that growth mindset to remain at the top of your game. If you still coaching the way you coach me when I was playing football growing up, then you're coaching a player who don't have a chance, right? I telling you, just being out in these environments, if you're still coaching the way that you coach me, no chance, right? So it's massively important for the coaches as well to be students of the game, for the coaches to develop a curriculum for themselves, to develop a pathway for themselves, set your dreams. Hey, I want to start here today. I want to be this by this time. What does success look for you? And why? You see, for me, the why is so important. Why? Why I want to be a coach? Or it might be because I want the glory, or I want to move out of the country. Your why is always important. Your why is only important to you. It don't matter to anybody else, but know your why, right? I know why I wanted to get back into youth first, because I wanted to give back to the game. I wanted to, to be around youth. And I remember being a youth and not having this I had great people around me. I had you, I had Ja, I had Keith, I had Bert, I had, but nobody that could give me this amount of knowledge I have now. The knowledge you have now, Dion, if you had it back in the day to give us, we'd have had more
Wow,
pros,
so
right?
true.
We would have had more pros.
So
If Ja had the
and sorry,
knowledge,
Tyke, just one thing on something you said there. I was talking to Sean De Silva recently, and I kind of showed him some evaluations that I'm doing now, and he said, "Coach, if you had taught me that stuff back then, I would have been twice the player." And I literally said to him, I said, "Sean, I apologize. Sean, I apologize to you, you know." And he said to me, "Coach, what are you apologizing for?" But we always knew that you were progressive and all that stuff. But I actually felt, to be quite honest, I felt like, and that's what made me, you asked earlier, Tiger, what made me go on to keep seeking and learning. I knew if I was being honest with myself, there's much more. There's much more. And if I stayed at home in Trinidad, in the Caribbean, with all due respect, you could only get so far. And that's what did it for me. That's why I'm still doing it.
yeah. And that's your why. And that, you have to understand your why, right? If you're doing it because somebody else wants you to do it, or because there's an expectation to do it, you'll never be as invested in it as if it's for you, right? The knowledge I have today, just even from giving this presentation, is far superior than I had yesterday, because now I went into things and we check and challenge and we ask a question. As they say, you always say, I'll put you on the spot. But putting me on the spot helps me to internalize and to think and to see a different perspective. That I've seen this presentation like 10 times. I've given similar presentations 4 or 5 times. But looking at it today, I'm like, wow. Yeah. This is something I didn't think about. Next time I'm going to add this in, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. Preparing this last night was pulling and picking from scouting and from the coaching and all that. And it started to give me a different lens. But that's just a growth mindset to want to now say, hey, I know that my journey is still way short of where it needs to be. I know that there's so much more that I want to achieve. I know that going through like what the next step looks like and why, and talking to mentors, and hey, so you know what? I want this next step to be in a space where I thought I wouldn't go in the pros, because the pros cutthroat, and the pros is like, you could lose your job tomorrow and I have no job security, and I have all these kids I need to make sure I can take care. And now you're like, oh, but you're in the environment, and you're like, oh, your juices flow and you want more, you want this. I could challenge myself at that next level. I want to see what it would look like. I want to be able to go and win this battle for a top player now. Me against, I ain't getting my competitiveness from coaching in the game, but I'm getting it from recruitment, from going out and winning that battle as a sporting director versus another sporting director. What I could sell to them as a project that makes them want to come to me. And I've been asking this question to 4 or 5 people, top people in MLS, people have been in. What makes me unique? What do you see as my strengths? Because I want to craft a role based around that, because I know I could develop on those much more. What are my weapons?
What is
And
your unique selling point? Yeah.
Tell me, yes. And tell me as well where you see the gaps where the chinks in my armor, where I'm weakest, because I still need to work on those and I need to develop those. Time-wise, do I try to develop them now more than the strengths, or do I develop the strengths more and then keep working on those gradually? But again, that is based on where you are in your journey, right? There's times that you have to invest more in developing your growth areas, your growth deficiencies. And there's times you have to develop the places that you're strong for, because you need to utilize that. But I want a role that allows me to really tap into my strengths, because I know that I have a proficiency in it, so I could be successful and I could grow more there. And while I'm doing it, yeah, well, one of the things I'd say in what I want to do, and again, is where I like look back at us, languages. I want to learn 4, 5, 6 languages, because I want to be able to communicate with players in their language. When you go into recruit, talk to agents, go into a country and assimilate right away and understand the cultures, like travel and playing the game in all these places is the biggest blessing, because you start to understand cultures and mindsets. And that's why I could go into 5 or 6 different countries now and be okay. But if I had stayed in Trinidad like you, and all you know is what you know, when you go, there's a culture shock, and so it's developing and the willingness to develop yourself more and more and more and drive to do it and the want to do it and being vulnerable. You see, being vulnerable and understanding that, hey, you have so much more to go. You see, humility is something
Everybody
that
in.
is so far, because we carry, as players, and as we have to have a certain amount of bravado and, like, you know, I have to, because to be the best, I have to, you know, but the understanding of how to be humble and vulnerable is what actually elevates you more and more and more. And I've come to learn that, because life have a funny way of humbling you quick sometimes. Eh?
Well said. Well
Yeah,
said.
the peak
Well
of your
said.
powers or whatever it is. And sometimes when you have that bravado or that thing, people just waiting for you to fall, because you act like you're better than people. So when you fall, the fall from grace is big. So I always try to, as much as I believe in myself and you have the self-confidence and all that, maintain a level of humility, maintain a level of relatability. I want to go into any place and people could talk to me and laugh with me and hug up and whatever it is, because I'm no better than anybody else. I have a platform now to help. I have a platform that I've been blessed to, like, do something now to give back. So my why is because I've been given that, I have to understand that I have a responsibility that's entrusted on me. We have a responsibility to pass it down to our players and to our coaches or whatever, because coming out of the Caribbean, I got the opportunity now that most didn't have. But I know that the quality is there, that we can do it. We can give more people opportunities, and it's not a handout, and it's not a, you're not going to get just because I in this position, because I also have to answer to people, and I also have to be able to justify. And I also get in the question of, well, why would I take this player over this player? Why would I take a player from the Caribbean who isn't going through all of the things? They're not going through the development. They're not invested in it. So, well, we need to give them a chance and they have real talent. Yeah, but we could go and find that in Brazil. We could go and find that in Argentina. We could find that in America. We could find it in Canada. Canada run through CONCACAF last year. Alphonso Davies is one of the top. Who would have thought that Canada would have been producing world-class players how many years ago? We had world-class players now. Who are our world-class players now? Who are our world-class players that are up and coming, that are going to be playing in leagues that matter? Right? I always hear about Real Gil, and I hear about Natty James, and I hear about, and I don't know. I don't know enough of them. I talked to Angus about them. He said they're good players. But you know Levi, but again, look at where Levi is in age now, right? 25, 26. Who's the next Levi? Who are we producing? Who's the next one? I talked to Tony Sherwood about who's the next one, because Tony seemed to be doing a great job at developing and getting them through. You know, Sosa will always call me and tell me, oh, this player. But again, I have to answer to others as to why this player matters. Why am I going to take a player from Trinidad and Tobago or from Jamaica or from wherever over another player? And I have to be able to be evidence-based and to show.
And what they have to understand is that, well, obviously it's clear from the presentation, there are many boxes to be ticked. There are many boxes to be ticked, you know, so you know, I wrote down here while you were talking, you know, everything you said, you know, somebody said, well, you have to be lucky. You know, Dwight was lucky. This one was lucky. But I have a little definition for luck, which I call preparation meeting opportunity. Sometimes you are prepared, and the opportunities had to come by. Sometimes you get the opportunity, like you talked about earlier. There's so many opportunities now, but you're not prepared. Don't say, like, you know, funny enough, I was having this discussion with a player yesterday, and you know, about tardiness and being on time. And then I said to the player, a lot of Caribbean players say, well, when I get there, I'll be serious. When I get there, I'll come on time. You talked about coming 1 hour before training. If the training is at 1 o'clock in the morning, you got to be there by 12. Get yourself warmed up, right? So when we get it, when we ready to go, I don't have to spend time now warming the players up. So if you can, Tiger, in a few minutes, as much as you can, address again the Caribbean player, because this is going to go viral. So much gold nuggets you've given us here. Address. I want you to do two things to me. Address the Caribbean player. They just consider these things, and at the same time address the coaches. So either which one you want to do first?
For me, I would say I'd start with the player. Always player-centric. It's a player. as a player, you have to know and understand that opportunity, as you see, can happen at any point in time. So if you're not prepared, it's going to bypass you. You don't know when I would be in the country, just happening to come to a game or somebody there. It's not advertised. It's not always going to be something that you can now say, okay, I have a week, I have a trial coming up, I have this. That's not how football works sometimes. Sometimes is, as your point is, opportunity beating preparation. I just show up a day and you tell me, hey, it have a group playing somewhere, let me go now. And I go and then I spot something. And all of a sudden, phone call. Hey, there's somebody we need to. Let's put him in our school, because we can't bring him till he's 18, but let's put him in our school. He could get touch points with us. He could be closer, get him into, practice games or whatever it is. He can't play in the league. Put him with a club where he can get the ITC. And all of a sudden, your trajectory changed. When Aston Villa and them were coming for Dwight, they were coming for Calvin Hutchinson, is my understanding, right?
Yeah, that's very true.
It was Calvin, it wasn't Dwight, right? And Calvin, if you talk to Bertil Calvin and sometimes Wendell Moore, I think he would have rated them as higher potential than Dwight when you talk to Coach Sinclair. But Dwight was prepared and the opportunity came and he grabbed it with two hands and he went, right? Russell and them had a different one going to Jamaica and with Toze and then to Portugal and Flint, Marcel, and and they went through the ringer and back with stories that you could talk about. But they were prepared. They were always prepared for when that opportunity presented itself. And I went through spells in my career when I wasn't prepared and opportunities might have bypassed me, And so again, now in my mindset right now, it's always being prepared. If you call me tomorrow, hey, you could go here. Yeah. I'm ready. I have a presentation ready. Like we talked, I put this together last night, right? Like, cause yeah, I prepared because I know I've done the work beforehand. So as a player, understand that you have the talent, the quality is there naturally. You have a lot of the physical tools. Where you need to learn is, what is my growth mindset? Do I have a positive growth mindset? Do I really believe that when the opportunity arises, I could do it? I hear so many stories. Players went, it was too cold. It was winter. I'm missing my girlfriend. But so you don't really want it, right? Because you have to come out your comfort zone, and you can come out your comfort zone in Trinidad and Tobago. You could not lie on the block. You could go and train at 5 a.m. in the morning when nobody else wants to train at 5 a.m. in the morning. You could do extra. You could ask your coach for extra time. You could find partners. You could do, hey, let me go and do something extra. Let me do the runs. Let me do the, I talked to Kevin about it. Kevin, you see Kevin go through 4 ACLs and keep coming back and keep coming back and keep coming. Kevin has one of the highest performing players you ever see, right? I used to rate Joven even more than Kevin. Just seeing them young at W Connection. And as a player, I would say if you have the right mindset, the right mentality, the belief, the desire to improve yourself, then that's all you could do. Control your controllable. You can't control if you get the opportunity. You can't control when it happens. You can't control. Trust me, you don't control that. That is between God and the universe and whoever else. That is not, you have no control. But what you could control is that if it does happen, you're very ready to grasp it. For the coaches, I would say that you have to own that we have a responsibility. You have to own that we are not the finished article. You have to own that you need to now take it upon yourself to go the extra mile. Because if we want to get to the place that we want to get to, from a professional standpoint as a coach, from a personal standpoint as a coach, it comes with the proof being in the pudding. Are you developing players that are making it to the next level? Because if you are, I guarantee you, if you are the one producing the next 5 players to leave Trinidad that go on to play at a top 5 country in Europe, somebody will come knocking on your door. Somebody going to ask what this man doing or this woman is doing to produce this player that's translating into that. right? You see Leon Bailey now. Everybody asking what are they doing in Jamaica with who is Craig Butler? Who is this one, right? Who is Monk Pleasant? How they producing Whisper? How they like what they're doing in track? What they're doing in Jamaica that producing these athletes, not just natural, that every year they with a population that is 1/100th of the size of America, or wherever it is, continuously winning, medaling at the Olympics, doing what is going on there that we need to go and either recruit that person or bring them, because talent isn't just the player. Talent is on the coaching side too. It's on the business side. It's on the management. I am being recruited right now in America or in Europe, wherever, because of the talent I have off the field. Nobody care about when I play football anymore in Salt Lake and all that. No, 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 no. What do I do every single day now that they say, hey, this is a top talent in his field. We want him in our organization. He's going to make us better. What are you doing as a coach that people are going to identify you as a top talent? Winning secondary school football, that is not it. That is not what they're going to judge you and say you're a top talent. Maybe if you're coaching in the pros and you go and you make a run in club in CONCACAF Champions League, if you are Angus and you can now win and get into Copa Americas and consistently, that is what you're being evaluated on. That is the stage that you're being judged on. So being content to say, oh, I win in Republic Bank Cup, or no chance. No chance. And if you're satisfied with that, that's all well and good. Everybody have their place. Everybody you have your why, right? I want to be the best coach that never leave Trinidad. I want to stay in Trinidad. I want to be known as that. People have that ambition too. I love the culture. I love the carnival. I love this. I happy because up here is stress, right? You're dealing with winter. You're dealing with driving. You know, Dion, in Virginia, we used to be driving 4 hours for one game. I drive in for longer, 8 hours round trip for a 2-hour game, right? Right. So it ain't easy. It ain't easy up here to be. Not everybody built for this. Not everybody wants this, right? You know, sometimes I ask myself, boy, just make enough money and go home and just rock back on the beach and, you know, consult for people, right? Just go and share your ideas and just live home, right? So whatever is your reason, whatever is your why, whatever is your ambition, elevate yourself to be the best at that, right? If you want to be the best in Trinidad, then you have to have records like what Bertel and I, where you win 6 college league and this. And if that's your metric for greatness, then that's your metric for greatness. And you live and you die by that. And if you feel happy at the end of it, that's it. Some people might have a greater ambition. Some people might want to coach outside. Some people might want to be the best in the Caribbean. You know, like we have a lot of guys now coaching the national teams. And we had, I think Lachu was coaching one, and Stern was coaching one, and Russell was coaching one. And, you know, we have, Jamal has been coaching one for how many ever years, you know, so it might be that, right? It might be to be set your bar high. I want to be coaching Man City, or you might never have the opportunity, but know that you did every single thing to give yourself the opportunity that when the bell was rung, you were ready. Somebody just said the other day, or last night, I heard it. Somebody was saying it would have been Lewandowski, somebody who was about to retire, and they're like, when the bell was rung 120 times for my country, I showed up every single time. Somebody have caps, 100 caps, you know, and when the bell is rung and school start, you have to be present. When the teacher doing a role, if you're not present, you're getting marked as absent. So when the bell rings, you have to be present. You have to be ready. You have to be aware. Control your controllables for everybody. Don't get caught up in the what this one doing, what that one doing. Don't live your life in envy. Don't live your life, that could be me and all that. That's not helping you. It's not helping anybody. It's a negative energy that's still not going to attract positivity to you, right? And I deal a lot in energy. If you want to live in negative energy, negativity will follow you. If you want to live in positivity and elevate yourself and do more, opportunities will arise. I mean, you and I know the story, how you end up becoming technical director at Trinidad. Nobody know the opportunities we were talking about prior to that nowhere close to that. And all of a sudden, you became technical director at Trinidad and Tobago football, right? Because when the bell was rung, you were present. And you could present, and you could give them what they needed to have. And that even comes with its own challenges and in the moment. But, you know, there's stories we could tell again for forever and ever. But at the point that the opportunity arises, be prepared, be ready, embrace it. And trust me, understand too that when you go into a new environment, when you go into all these things, as prepared as you are and all of that, you'll go through the periods of self-doubt. You'll go through, in the first 2 months, I come into Red Bulls and I'm like, wait, I really ready for this? Like, ooh, everything moving at 100 miles out because it was into the fire and go. It wasn't all that we go through like a training
No
period.
honeymoon, no honeymoon.
Nah, that gone nowadays, that gone, that go. And so you're going to have the self-doubts. And we all human, we all go through it. I have it up to today. Oh, good, if I take this step already, I want to be a sporting director. I want to be a GM of a club. When they give it to me, I still gonna be like, oh, good. Wait already, you know? But then you will know that you are because you know that you're prepared and you know that you're able to do it. And every single day you'll be like, yeah, this is what I prepared for. I'm ready for it, right? So you'll never know until you're in the environment. But it comes with the preparation. It comes with the growth mindset. It comes with the desire to want to be more and to be better and to achieve, right? Like I think till the day I leave the earth, I always going to want to be better than the day before. That's just me. You know, I don't know what better means every single day, but I know I want to be better. And so sometimes I have to go and find out what better means, what better is. Other times I will see it for myself and I know it's better and I know, okay, I need that. Other times my performance will tell me that you could have been better. I could have been better. I should have been better. And if you have that mindset, I think you give yourself a good chance.
So knowledge is power, and power is influence that leads to success. Leslie, let me tell you, this is not just this interview, and I'm taking no credit. I give God all the glory, right? What you have done here and what you'll be doing is inspiring not just coaches from the Caribbean, but any coach who wants, and I can say this 100%, any coach who wants to get a little push, a little encouragement, this video is going to help them. This little session we had today for 4 hours is going to help them because we could have kept going on and on and on and on and on. You spoke to players, you spoke to coaches, you're talking sometimes and my paw is raised because it's like, this is so inspiring because to the coach who says, I don't have it, I don't have this and I don't have that. If I give some guys some of my background and how I end up, you see, you ask Jester, I won't get into all of it now. How I end up in some places and but them days wasn't suitcase, was grip.
Yeah.
Right? And watch me, I go to places and had to take some bus, man. Taking the bus and the train. That's how I get there. And when they tell me come for 10 o'clock, I'm there by 8 o'clock in the morning because I really want to see what they're doing and I want to learn. And the place cold. And sometimes, watch me, sometimes I might eat 1 meal a day. All right? I told people, you know, the little coaching school I had, if I had decided to take that money and I could have buy a Benz and do all them strippiness, but with an empty head. I invest the money in knowledge, in seeking knowledge, in seeking knowledge. And it's not going to be always easy because, as you rightly said a little earlier, you want to go to Man United, you want to go to Liverpool. It's not easy to get in those places. It's not easy to get in those places to learn. But you know what? Take different steps. Take different steps. Right? People, how I ended up at Liverpool, right? I went to a coaching seminar in England, and I'm sitting down next to the academy director of Arsenal, not Arsenal, of Everton, and I said, man, I just read something about Liverpool Academy, man. I wish I could go there, boy. And he just turns around and go, John, can you take this lad in? Not knowing right behind me is the academy director from Liverpool. I mean, the rest is history. But I'm just showing you, you gotta take that chance. So, and to the players who stop saying Dwight was lucky and this one was that, stop saying that.
You know, Dwight, if you know Dwight, you know Dwight wasn't the kind of work that you wouldn't. I think up to today, Dwight is still do 2,000 sit-ups and push-ups. To today, when he have nothing to play for, nothing to do. Up to today, Brian Lara wasn't lucky. Dwight wasn't lucky, and that was the question that we didn't touch. Where it was, like, what is talent? You know, is talent innate? Is it intrinsic? Can you just be born and be Dwight Yorker? No, you have to work. Mozart and Beethoven, prodigies. We went into this debate, US soccer, and were they prodigies or did they have to apply their talent and train and do the 10,000 hours? You weren't seeing what they were doing beyond, but they were preparing and they were practicing and you see the end product and you think, oh yeah, that guy was lucky. He got there because Nobody know what you was going through in soccer. Nobody know what you was going through in Colorado. Nobody know all the things, right? I would know because we share these stories. Nobody would know what I went through in gym. Nobody would know what Angus went through in these places. Nobody know what Dwight went through. They don't know the races. They don't know all of these things. Tony Rougier was talking to the other day. They don't know. They see the end product. And again, we give off the facade of this is who we are. But this is not who we are. Who
Well
we are,
said.
all the
Well
chinks
said.
in the armor that built us to where we needed to be. So, I mean, again, I'm so thankful and blessed that you giving me a platform like this, and we talk about it all the time. And obviously, like I said, we could have gone, I mean, I cut the slide short too, because I was like, if I add in this more, we even go into pathways and different ways, because that is a big thing for the players. It might be,
Yes.
all right, can we get you into a school? Can you go the university route? Like all of that, pathways to success. We have kids, we do it right now with us where we do a slide where we have the guys who went to college and university and now we're back at the first team. We have the guys who go and sign a contract at 16. We have the USL pathway. We have the European and back. So there's so many different ways and avenues that we could go into more and more slides. And like I said, when we started talking about doing this, and sorry it took so long for the to happen, but life is. But about doing something continuously, because it wouldn't just be one conversation.
No.
So much, and interfacing with the Stevens and doing it alongside them and interfacing with Brian and interfacing with Dwight and sharing stories and sharing, comparing and contrasting where we are now in the journey. Because look at Dwight. Dwight wants to be a coach at a high level and look at the struggles he's going through right now to get to that, right? And they think Dwight lucky. If he was so lucky, you'd have a job already, because he win everything he could win in the game and he was a great player and he scored goals. Why are you not getting a job? So it's not luck. It's not, and he preparing and he doing his badges and he doing all of that, right? So, but when the opportunity comes and the bell rings, is he prepared, right? And only Dwight could answer that. And I'm sure, just knowing the individual, that he probably will be. But after that, it's out of our hands. So, I mean, yeah, I'm as grateful as you are for being given the platform and the opportunity to do it. And anytime, anytime that we have the chance to sit down and carve out 3 or 4 hours, which is not, I don't know when this is happening. I tell my mommy, I said, this is the first weekend in like so long that I had just 3 hours to just sit down and talk football, and so it's good. It's a blessing.
Tiger, on behalf of the many people, coaches, parents, players, you're making us proud. And I mean that very sincerely. You're making us proud. Keep reaching for those stars, and keep doing whatever you're doing, and keep excelling, because you're inspiring people, right? You're inspiring people. It's a lot of work. It's not easy being out there. And with the environments, it's not easy being out there, but keep doing what you're doing. Keep doing what you're doing, and we're gonna have another one again of these, and it's such a joy. So on behalf of the people of Trinidad and Tobago, the people of the Caribbean, and all the many people that will see this all from around the world, I want to thank you for being you. Because let me say it this way, if you talk about doubts, if you had given up somewhere along the line, we wouldn't be having this conversation now. So I want to thank you, and I want to thank God for you that you didn't give up. Because in all of it, having to do all the things that you talk about, kind of tough situations, sleeping in your car and different things that you went through, thank you for pursuing and for showing what persistence is about. Because without people like you, people like other people will not go far, because they will always have those doubts and they act upon those doubts, as opposed to acting upon that faith and, look, I'm just going to go for it and then see where things happen. So really, really want to thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And again, the mind is a powerful thing and a powerful tool. And I guess throughout some of the times that I was going through things, you always know that somebody has it worse than you, and how you frame your experience helps you to be able to become what you want. So when I was saying it at night, I was sleeping in my car, I was like, well, at least I'm blessed to have a car. Right? There are people that do have a car. I played with a player. Everybody would know his name on the national team, play in the UK and stuff. Was homeless for a little bit. I had to come back home. And so no matter what you think, in the grand scheme of things, there's somebody that's going through something a little bit worse than you, somebody who could be born in Trinidad and Tobago, blessed, one of the best countries in the world when you think about it, lifestyle-wise and all that and stuff. We could have been born in Palestine right now. We could have been born, you know. So nothing should be an obstacle for us striving for what we can get. Yeah, we there are people more blessed than us, but there's people in worse situations than us, right? So just keep our level within all of it. That's my parting words, I should say. Always try to keep at our level. Be as ambitious as you want to be, but understand that ambition requires hard work. Yeah, ambition is just a dream. You know, at some point in time, you have to put the work in to follow it and to live the dream. And, you know, as a resource, as you know, anybody that wants to reach out and stuff, you could tell them they can reach out. Tell them time is be tough. So don't get that.
Yeah, but definitely.
But certainly, if anybody wants to talk more personal level, share story, how they could do stuff and all that, you know, I'm always open to that conversation with anybody, as much as I could help. My blessing is, and my, like you, my weapon is people, is being able to help people. And I think you and I share that, and we embrace it. A lot of people might have it and they don't embrace it. So thank you, Trinidad and Tobago, for creating me, helping me, my mom, my dad, my sisters, best friends, everybody, teammates, all along the way. Everybody played a part in helping me to be in this space, and they continue to. So I'm very grateful and thankful for this opportunity, the people I work with, all of that, just for trusting in me to deliver. And you know, one thing with me, I'll always continue to work hard to try to be able to deliver more.
Excellent. So you have a wonderful rest of your day. By the way, we could have gone on for some hours, some more hours, and it didn't seem that long.
You telling me what time we started? 11:30 is over 3 hours now.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, no 10. Yeah, because we came on at what, 10:30?
Yeah.
Over 3 hours, 10. Wow.
But it's fun, man. It's fun, and as I said, you know, enjoy learning, and buddy, I'm gonna make contact soon. All right, so let's catch up. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and keep doing what you're doing, because it's a blessing to the world, not just to the Caribbean, but you're a blessing to the world, and I mean that very sincerely.
Thank you so much, Dion. Thank you, and you know, love to you, love to your family, love to everyone. And we'll talk soon.
We'll talk soon, buddy. All the best.
Take care. All the best.
You too.